Then it is currently 7:05 p.m. As I said, that means it's 4:05 Arizona Standard Time. So that said, we will get this meeting started tonight for the June ANC 1A meeting. Commissioner Rybarczyk, do you mind taking roll call?
Of course. Commissioner Bonneau.
Present.
Commissioner Lehman Morales.
Present.
Commissioner Rybarczyk here. Commissioner Miller.
Present.
Commissioner Wood.
Here.
Commissioner Gorpade.
Here.
Commissioner Bass.
Present.
Commissioner Ray.
Did you skip 1A06?
Commissioner Wood is here.
Maybe you skipped Commissioner Hall.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Hall.
Yeah, I'm here.
Commissioner Ray.
Present.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
Commissioner Love Wade.
Present.
And Commissioner Clock.
Present.
We have quorum.
Fantastic. And based on the notice verification, this meeting was noticed to all community, to the community via listserv, commission newsletter, social media, website, and e-calendar. We will then move on to approval of the agenda, including the consent agenda and official business. I will be honest, I'm working off the version of the agenda that is on our website. So if there's anything that needs to change, please let me know. I can go over it quickly. We have community announcements, then committee reports, followed by education, public safety, transportation, zoning, parks, and planning. Presentations, we have the FY22 budget presentation with a guest, Andrew Trueblood, director from the DC Office of Planning, followed by Nicole McEntee, Office of the Tenant Advocate, and then followed by our representatives from our council member and mayor. The consent agenda, as I have it, has approval of the prior minutes, a letter of support for speed bumps on the 1400 block of Parkwood Place, a letter of support for request for traffic calming and signage on the 600 and 700 blocks of Otis Place, a letter of support for traffic safety assessment at the intersection of Sherman Avenue and Lamont Street, a letter of support for traffic safety assessment and installation of speed bumps on Holmead Place between Oak Street and Spring Road, authorization for Commissioner Miller to testify on behalf of ANC 1A regarding education and youth-related requests previously approved by the Commission. We would then move into official business, and the items that I have are first is BZA case 20425 for 616 Quebec Place. Second is a grant for the Parkview neighborhood cleanup, sponsored by Commissioner Brown. Third, resolution of support for response to DDOT's notice of intent for the increased no standing or parking anytime restrictions on the intersection of 400 Columbia Road, followed by the letter of support in response to DDOT's notice for the installation of the Water Street protected bike lane, followed by the letter of support to council for continuing fare-free circulator rides. And the last thing on my list is the resolution urging DDOT to provide ANC 1A with a comprehensive proposal of crosstown multimodal transportation study implementation and existing concepts and full review of its planned transportation networks throughout the commission area. If there's anything that is not on my version of the agenda or additions, amendments, changes, please let me know at this time. And I will say, don't be shy. Feel free to chime in as I'm dealing with a little bit of sun glare.
Chairman, if I may, I think there was some miscommunication. If we could strike the letter of support for the 1400 block of Parkwood Place, as I'll have that for us next month to consider. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. I will have that removed from this version of the agenda. Are there any other amendments, changes, additions?
I saw in the packet this evening information about a grant proposal. Is that still potentially on the agenda? I'm not sure.
Are
We,
you talking about the grant agenda for the community cleanup?
Yes.
Yes, that's still on the
Oh.
agenda.
I don't believe.
There
you-
was another one.
yeah, there were 2 grants.
Oh,
The other one was the, I guess the Morton Street event. I'm trying to think of the right words because the grant's not in front of me. I know Commissioner Lovewade and Miller have seen it. I know it was, I know I have a copy. It's not in front of me right now.
Right.
But that
It
was from the
for,
Ward 1. I will add it to the official agenda so that we can talk about it at that time. And I will put it as issue 7.
Chairperson, what was this grant for? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Let me pull it up. It was from the Ward 1 community pod, and I believe it was for mural. It did ask for some things that we can't support, like a stipend for staff. It's an educational kind of thing. I know that in the past we have had some issues related to like field trips, things like that, even though they're community serving. There's been some discussion as to how much of the community should be served, et cetera. So there are some issues we need to talk through. I will try to find it as we're going through the other agenda items and forward it to everybody so that you have it. And if there's not enough information and it's tabled, that could always be an option.
Chair, are we able to approve the May 2021 meeting minutes at our July meeting?
We could. There's nothing that says. The only thing I would question, and maybe Commissioner Miller, you can weigh in on this. Do you need approved minutes right now for any outstanding quarterly reports to the office for the audit and related to the treasurer's reports?
no, it's fine.
Okay. I know that we do have to supply minutes for the quarterly report. So if it's not holding that up, we could move the approval of the May minutes to the next meeting.
I would
It
appreciate
wouldn't be
that. Thank you.
for a current, no, it wouldn't be for a quarter we're submitting until next.
Okay. So then we will strike the approval of the May 2021 minutes and reintroduce them in July,
Thank
if
you.
that works. All right. Are there any other additions, changes, amendments to the agenda? If not, I will move that we approve the agenda as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Okay, moving into community announcements. Are there any announcements from members of the commission? And while you're teeing up, following that, if there's any announcements from members of the community, please let us know by raising your hand, or I believe it, commissioners, you can correct me, is it *9? If you called in. But either way, let us know so that we can queue you up for your question. And I do see we have one already. So starting with commissioners, are there any commissioners with community announcements?
I do. We have a concerned resident, one of our most active and senior residents who lives on the 700 block of Irving Street. Folks may know Miss Janie Boyd. She is leading a food and household product distribution project. I think she is partnering with her church, the Park Place Community Church. And she is looking for organizations within the neighborhood who works with individuals and families who might be in need of these products. She says that I'm not quite sure how many households would be served by these products, but I understand there's a lot to give and that there's some bulk items that could be disseminated to community members in need. So if commissioners have ideas or thoughts, or if members of the community have ideas and thoughts, if they like to share that during community announcements, please do. My email address is 1a10@anc.dc.gov. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And I think she's looking for folks to, looking for ideas of organizations and places within the week, and the church will handle drop off.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. I did not see if Commissioner Bonneau or Commissioner Gorbaday, which one went up first. So, okay, Commissioner Gorbaday.
Sorry, Commissioner Bonneau, I know you were first, but I'll go. I am hosting another virtual recruitment fair for DC youth tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. I have 12 different post-secondary, so post-high school training and job placement programs that are looking for applicants. So if you know any young people that are looking for work, that are looking to get trained for high skill jobs, then please, I'm going to put the registration link into the chat. So you are more than welcome to share that with your community. And I'll also put my email in the chat. So if you have any questions, please reach out. It's tomorrow, Thursday at 3:30 p.m. over Zoom.
Thank you, Commissioner. Moving on to Commissioner Bonneau.
Thanks, Chairman. We are having our monthly cleanup for 1A01 this Saturday, June 12th, 11 a.m. meeting at the Spring Ferry Triangle. And then we'll have a little bit of a social afterwards if people want to stick around, and I would love to see you all there. Thanks.
Layla, sorry, you're doing a cleanup for trash? Okay, good. I had a constituent email me about that. I will forward that to him. What, can you say that again?
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat.
Sorry, I'm eating, so I'm off camera.
Understood.
No worries. I'll put it in the chat.
Thanks, Layla.
Okay. If there are no other commissioner announcements from commissioners, unless I don't know, Commissioner Love-Wade, are you indicating that you have an announcement? Okay, not seeing any. I know that we have a hand raised from Lieutenant Justin.
Could you hear me?
Mark. No, I could not. Commissioner Love-Wade, if you have an announcement, we'll go to you first, and then we'll go to, we have someone from MPD with an announcement. We'll go to them next.
Okay, thank you. A brief announcement that on June the 18th, the Cardozo High School is holding its first annual Juneteenth celebration between 4:30 and 7:30 p.m. The whole community is invited. It's my alma mater, so I'd like to support it as much as I can and see everyone there.
Thank you, Commissioner. Dom, can we bring up the lieutenant for his announcement?
Hey, good afternoon. Good evening, everyone.
Good afternoon and welcome.
Thank you. Very happy to be here. My name is Justin Markowitz. I just got to 3D a couple weeks ago. New lieutenant. I'm currently on day work, filling in for a little while, but I'm going to be switching to evenings. And 1A is one of the areas that I'm responsible for. As I kind of get the lay of the land, I'm looking forward to hopefully partnering with as many people as I can, because I want to know what the community's concerns are, what your concerns are, how I can possibly help. And I don't know if you do community walks with your community, whatever it is that you would like me to be involved in, because I'm also a realist. I know that people have differing opinions on what they would like the police to be involved in. Whatever you have me get involved in, I'll do what I can to participate. And I'll put my email in the chat so you all have it. And have a list, I think, of everyone's email. So I'll send an email out, introduce myself. So all my contact information is there. So you have that going forward. But thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here in 3D.
Question to you. Now, I guess you answered that at the time. You said you're new to 3D. One thing that we could use is, and I think that it's happened in the past, and I hope it's still going, but as you may realize, police service areas are not aligned with political boundaries or ANC boundaries. And so our commission is served by 2 different districts.
Yeah.
And with that said, we do need to make sure that there's strong coordination between the 2. Otherwise, people just, like, problems just cross the street literally, and we don't get the services regardless of what that service is. So I would just say, and I I'm going to be a strong advocate here that everyone has a job to do, including MPD, and we expect everyone to collaborate and work outside of the silos as much as possible so we can get the right resources to the right issues.
Yeah, I absolutely that. And I'm personally someone who enjoys finding creative solutions to problems. I'm obviously there's a national conversation going on about what the role of the police should be. And I think the conversation is important because I don't think the police should be handling 100% of the things that we are responsible for. So getting community partners involved is really important. Other DC government agencies is very important. But I think it's truly through the partnership that we're able to do the best things and get the most help to the problems and the stuff that's affecting the community.
I would also recommend that if you're new to 3D, we do have an active public safety committee. It might be worth a future partnership to strengthen the relationship and have a broader introduction to yourself through that opportunity too. Okay.
And I'll put it out there. I know everyone's got differing levels of comfort in this as we're reemerging from COVID. I'm fine doing Zoom or FaceTime with people, but I'm also not opposed to meeting in person and getting to see the areas that you're responsible for, because I get to know you, I get to know your area, and it also helps me get to know the 3rd district, which is important in my role.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I'm sure we will have some follow-up conversations with you collectively and one-on-one.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm going to put my email address in here. So in the meantime, if anyone needs anything, you can send me an email and I'll send you guys a follow-up email when I get to work tomorrow morning.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bass, I just wanted to ask a quick question of the lieutenant.
Sure, absolutely.
Hi, Lieutenant. I'm Christy Miller. I'm in 1A05. And speaking to Commissioner Bass's point, I'm sitting in 3D and looking out my window at 4D across the street, both of which are in my SMD. I appreciate your candidness and also your willingness to really approach our public safety creatively and from a place of solutions. I know you're still new and I can reach out to you later, but I'm curious if you've had or seen any impact to the new 911 pilot directing emergency calls for crisis populations to mental health support.
So
specifically in our area.
Not necessarily specific in your area, because I'm still sort of absorbing all of 3D. I'm in this rapid grabbing for any knowledge I can. I'm not unfamiliar with 3D, but it's the first time in my career that I've been assigned here. So I think with any pilot program, there's some road bumps in the beginning of it, and we're ironing out those things. I think one of the challenges is going to be to identify what safety for the counselors is like the most important thing. And when they feel a situation is potentially unsafe, they will call the police. realistically, that puts us back in the situation where the police are getting involved, and I'm not saying that it's not our job to, but I'm very aware that the presence of police officers to people in a mental health crisis can be a kind of an escalating factor. So I mean, we're only 6 days, I forget what day it is, 9 days into the program, and we have been already working together. There were some roadblocks in the first couple of days, just everyone figure out what their role and responsibility was. But my officers seem to be excited about the partnership opportunities because we feel that the professionals are better suited to deal with this than we are. We do the best we can, but we're not the ideal solution, I don't think.
Great. Well, I appreciate you introducing yourself, and I'll reach out to you tomorrow to follow up both on my SMD's needs, but also sort of making sure that we can ensure that that program is implemented with fidelity and to the best service of our residents.
Actually, that helps everyone. It helps the citizens, the people in mental health crisis, and it helps the police department.
Great. Thanks. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, Commissioner Miller. Are there any other questions from commissioners for the lieutenant? Seeing none. Thank you, Lieutenant. We will now move on to our committee reports. First up is Education. Commissioner Miller, do you have a report?
Great. Yes. No. So we met this month. Again, the budget was our big topic of conversation. We met to discuss the release of the mayor's budget finally after 3 delays. And tonight you'll see that I'm submitting a request to have all of our previous resolutions, letters, and testimonies for approval to submit before the council as testimony. And so we'll be preparing a number of testimonies speaking to what our commission has weighed in on over the last year. And to be frank, almost every year repetitively, again, lifting up all that. And another big part that we've discussed and that we'll be addressing in this month's meeting is once we get to the budget season, as many of us who've been doing this have seen, it's really too late. And so we really need to begin the process of advocating and lifting up our community's needs before we get to where we are now, where we're just scrambling for the dollars. So we'll be putting together that strategy. Every year we introduce a roadmap and a strategic vision of how we want to focus. So we'll be reevaluating that for this coming year. So if anybody's interested in youth and education issues, as many know, our committee deals more with the externalities and the impacts that policing, of course, but more importantly, housing, access to resources have on our families, and of course, ultimately on the success of our young people.
Oh, that sounds great, and I can't agree enough about like right now, even though it's budget season, we really should be putting together a roadmap for next year's budget season. Seriously, it takes that long.
I did want to highlight Commissioner Bass because I know this is something that you've pushed very strongly for, and I know that we've written letters and resolutions in the past on this, but we did receive, it didn't come into my pockets, just to be clear. But the mayor did allocate a significant amount of funding to our roving leaders and DPR resources for our young people. So we're excited about that. We're going to deep dive. And ultimately, we have the money, so we need to make sure it's being spent in our community and that it's serving our residents.
Absolutely agreed. Any questions for Commissioner Miller? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Commissioner, and we will move on to public safety.
We have one participant with a question or with their hand raised.
Well, that's actually a representative from Councilmember Nadeau's office. So I will say,
oh, gotcha.
Yeah, since they have a standing space on the agenda, I will just reserve this space for them. All right, moving on to public safety. Do we have a public safety report?
Hi, yes, thank you. Judson and I hosted a May public safety meeting where we heard from representatives of the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, as well as our CSC violence interrupters that work in our community. And we had members of the DC Peace team who have been regular attendees of our public safety committee with us as well. And we're really excited about that partnership. They've been getting to know different community-based organizations, and more to come on that, but we're hoping to have some more direct outreach and training opportunities for community members who are looking to get more involved. So very excited about that. And then we continue to meet the third Thursday of the month, so June 17th. Our focus this month will be the intersection of youth and public safety, and a big thank you to Commissioner Gorpade, who is organizing the content and speakers for that session. So really looking at opportunities for youth, especially as they transition out of high school, and summer opportunities, as you heard her mention earlier. So excited about that. And then a couple days ago, the mayor hosted a press conference about the FY22 building blocks investment around public safety. So I haven't had a chance to kind of dig into all of those investments and announcements, but looking forward to partnership on that. So happy to answer any questions, and we'll defer to my co-chair if there's anything I missed.
No, that was great. See Commissioner Brown, I think he has a question.
Okay, Commissioner Brown.
Yes, I remembered at the, I believe it was the April meeting, Commissioner Bass, you had outlined some of the recommendations from the mayor's, I believe it was the Public Safety Task Force, and was wondering if the recommendations was already going through the committee, or if you're still considering those recommendations going through the committee, just for us to, I don't know if we need to weigh in or not. I know that you're representing our ANC or possibly our ward on that task force, but just wondering if there's a possibility where, you're offering supportive feedback around that.
I'll be honest, the report was delivered to the council. I know that there's a great deal of advocacy on many of those issues before the council from many of the stakeholders already. I'm not sure, I'm not aware of anything specifically being reviewed from our commission, but we certainly could. But for instance, I think that there are things that we have collectively discussed among commissioners for years, such as day centers, that we really need in our community. Mm-hmm. And so I think there are things that made it into the report based on my personal experiences and my experiences working with all of you over the years on just what would make common sense, or more importantly, the services we've all been asking for well over 6+ years, depending upon your tenure, and still don't have the resources to address many of our systemic, not just, I won't say just public safety issues, but issues that may not be directly related to public safety today, but lead to a public safety issue when not addressed. So yeah, I mean, what I would say is I'm happy to dig through the report with anyone who's interested and pull out perhaps items that the commission could really advocate for that would have a really positive impact directly for our community. I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the lieutenant's comments earlier and Commissioner Miller's comments earlier about individuals with mental health issues and coordination with DBH, and just having a better approach for triaging how those cases are handled, and just special populations in general, as LGBTQ, homeless populations. I know, for Georgia Avenue, we tend to see that often, and our businesses, We have complaints from businesses, but I don't think that there's just a clear approach for how those cases are properly handled. So, I would love the opportunity to, just provide feedback from my perspective, but I'm sure other commissioners would like to as well if there's opportunity.
Well, and I'll throw in, I'll interject one more thing before we get to Commissioner Miller as well, that while the Police Reform Commission's report, if memory serves, it's been a while since I've looked at the total number, but it's like 89 or 90 recommendations. It's a long report. But I also want to fold in that following the submission of that report, on a separate topic, I was contacted by the auditor's office because the NEAR Act, and in particular, violence interrupters and their effectiveness, is currently being audited. And I think that we could collectively also have a conversation about that. I think other 1A commissioners may have also received some outreach, but I know not all of us did. So that may be one more thing that we need to talk about collectively. Commissioner Miller?
Oh, yes. No, sorry. I did want to say in our Education and Youth Committee, we did actually address the first chapter of, as you've mentioned, Commissioner Pace, a very, very lengthy report, which does specifically discuss the role of police in schools and with youth. One of the recommendations, of course, was mental health supports for both our in-school and out, which our commission has already passed a resolution, many every year. So we'll be referencing that again in testimony, along with any of the other recommendations we've made over this year and last that are in reference to the recommendation. And the goal we have for July meeting, because we do want to give some ramp up time, and we would like to see commissions and commissioners across wards participate. We are looking to host the committee that specifically addressed the police in the school and the needs and recommendations that that committee came out with. And again, as Commissioner Bass mentioned, and Commissioner Lehman Morales, I know that you were also looking at that when we were discussing it. I think it's 250 pages. So as Commissioner Love Wade always loves to say, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. So we're going to tackle that first list of recommendations and really make sure that we are doing our part. And I think that will be it'll be looking at it, but it will also be, where did we land after this recommendation, but how do we make sure that, again, we're ensuring that that's being implemented going into next year, both with the funding that's been made available through FY22, but also if not, that we're fighting and advocating for that in FY23. Along with the
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for that, Commissioner Miller. That was helpful. Okay, seeing no more hands raised from commissioners, let's move on to the Transportation Committee report.
Hi, all. Thank you to so many people that attended last month's committee meeting. It was lively. We hosted Aaron Goldbeck, who joined us to discuss the Crosstown project and a number of other offshoots in that area. So we discussed water updates along with Kenyon, which I know we'll be discussing later on tonight as well. We are waiting on DDOT to provide the ANC with updates to Park Place as well as Park that we've requested in the past. We know that those are in the works and a few weeks off. So I'm hoping we're able to have those in time for the June meeting. And if not, we may have to be a little flexible on the exact date that we're meeting. And there's no good time to share this, but I know I've shared with a number of folks. Next month will be my last ANC 1A meeting. I'll be stepping down, and it will be time for other folks to hopefully please step up and get involved with the Transportation Committee, as this has been a very challenging, very rewarding portion of serving the community. And I cannot stress to you enough how important it is that we have folks really plugged in and paying attention to this, and acting with our neighbors, acting with our community groups, and acting with our government agencies that we work with all the time. So please, if you're interested in these topics, please reach out so we can try to get you plugged in as soon as possible.
Thank you, Commissioner Robarczyk, and a reminder that you do not need to be an elected ANC commissioner to serve on a committee. So please feel free to step up if you're very interested and engaged in transportation. We'd love to have you. Moving on to zoning, parks, and planning, since I don't see any commissioner hands raised. Commissioner Ray?
Good evening, everyone. Michael Ray, Chair of the committee. We did meet last month, and we focused in on vacant and abandoned properties, helping to create a list that will go to the chairman of the DC Council, who called for a committee hearing. There was a committee hearing on the topic, and you can view that online if you ever choose. But we will be providing that list to his committee in case they want to make any future actions on how DCRA handles vacant and blighted properties. And I appreciate everyone sending in their recommendations. We do have a meeting scheduled for this month. It's next Tuesday. However, I will warn you that I don't have anything currently on the list. We don't have any BZA cases that are currently pending. So it may be a brief thing if nothing pops up. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ray. And not seeing any other commissioner hands up, we can now move to the presentations. The first one up is the FY22 budget presentation. We are honored to be joined by the Director of the DC Office of Planning, Andrew Trueblood. Hopefully you all know who he is, since we've just completed the comprehensive plan mental haze that we've all gone through. So now that that's over, hopefully we can get on to, hopefully just as important a topic that we can start digging into something else. So Director Trueblood, welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Bass and Commission 1A. Okay, great, James, you got the presentation there. I'll just start off by saying it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for hosting me. This is my first visit to ANC 1A, but not my first experience with you all. You all win, as I told Chairman Bass, you won the prize of most feedback for the comp plan, and hopefully, and I know you made it better, and I really appreciate all the time that you put into it. So I'll just say thank you. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here to talk about the proposed budget. I guess I will say though, even just hearing the committee report outs, you all, I think, have probably done a lot of work in your respective areas around the budget. I only have a few minutes, so I'm going to do a high-level overview. There's a lot more information available online at budget.dc.gov, including the mayor's presentation, and as well as council presentation, as well as you all know, opportunity to sign up for agency hearings. OPs is tomorrow at 3 p.m. if you're interested, as well as it's OP, Office of Zoning, and DCRA. So I will be sharing more about I will be sharing more about our budget there. Sorry, I'm trying to pull up my talking points. Sorry, just 1 second, because I am in a view that I cannot get out of. There we go. So this is the mayor's FY22 Fair Shop budget. And I think it really seeks to honor the sacrifices of our residents during COVID-19 by setting our community up for a strong recovery, whether it's economic, academic, or all of our community's physical and mental health needs. I think with this budget, we are doubling down on our commitment to building back better, starting with the foundation of a more equitable Washington, D.C. Our response over the past year and a half has been unprecedented, and you can see here that we have much to be proud of. We have worked together as a community to take care of our residents' basic needs, and I heard some of that earlier in the report out, including meals, shelters, and shelter. We support a citywide transition to distance learning and then a partial return and soon to be a full return to in-person learning. We have distributed more than $2 billion in federal and local unemployment benefits. And we built a testing, tracing, and vaccination program that we should all be proud of, having reached, I think, 70% vaccination recently. With the fiscal year 2022 budget, we will continue a robust COVID-19 response that will help us protect residents, keep our community safe, and look to recovery. We are, of course, fortunate that DC did enter the pandemic financially strong. Our budgetary decisions throughout the response have been prudent and involve targeted reductions in agency spending, strategic and measured use of available reserves, and maximal use of federal relief funds. These prudent measures allowed us to avoid drastic cuts to public services, to maintain a strong financial foundation for future growth, and as you will see in today's presentation, to make big investments in solutions to some of our city's biggest challenges. In this Fair Shop budget, we focus on what we know to be the pillars of an equitable recovery: accelerating student learning and increasing access to childcare, reducing health inequities, increasing access to safe and affordable housing, reducing gun violence, supporting businesses and residents hit hardest by the economic crisis of the past year and a half, and continuing to build a stronger and more inclusive economy. There's a lot in this budget, you'll see a skipping a few of the slides that the mayor presented in the interest of time, but maybe I'll just share a few things. First, on public education and learning acceleration, a $3.5 billion total budget, and you see some of the breakdown up here. 41 million over 4 years for high impact tutoring and evidence-based approach to accelerating student learning post-pandemic. $5.6 million to increase access to summer programming with that academic enrichment. It's also worth noting that there is, I think, $70 million in the budget, in the capital budget for the Tubman modernization and renovation. The next slide is childcare. $182 million includes back to work childcare grants for 90 licensed childcare centers to preserve the number of available seats for DC families, and a second round of access to quality grants for $10 million across FY 22 and 23 to increase the number of quality and high quality seats in DC, working to improve affordability, supply, and quality. The next one is health. $5.3 billion. As many of you know, this is the biggest chunk of our budget. There's $15 million to support small businesses and residents whose health insurance premiums are in arrears, and $75 million to support ongoing testing, vaccination, isolation and quarantine, cleaning, PPE, and other needs to get us through the pandemic. The next slide. This is one that is very close to me. Affordable housing, the mayor's goals of 36,000 housing units by 2025, 12,000 affordable units, as well as goals to ensure that our housing and affordable housing are produced equitably across our city. There is a significant investment here. The total funds are almost 900 million, but I really want to highlight the historic $400 million investment in the Housing Production Trust Fund, as well as $42 million for project and sponsor-based vouchers to make housing for the deeply affordable low-income residents. So for those who are interested, the Housing Production Trust Fund seeks to produce 50% of its units to our lowest income residents. That's less than 30% of MFI, less than $40,000, $50,000 a year, depending on the size of the family and one of the things we need is those vouchers. So it's not just about putting the HPTF money in, it's about pairing it with voucher money. So that is incredibly important. There's also $352 million in rent and utility assistance to prevent evictions through the Stay DC program. We know this is going to be critical as we get back to reopening. As the public health emergency recedes, we'll need this assistance will ensure that residents can stay in their houses no matter what their challenges they may have faced during the pandemic. The next slide is about reducing gun violence with the total fund, public safety and gun violence, and gun violence prevention, I should say. $1.5 billion is this funding. There's $11 million to support returning citizens with cash assistance, financial coaching, and peer navigators as our returning citizens transition back into their communities. We have $7.8 million for additional violence interrupters and $400,000 for additional credible messengers. On the economic recovery front, we have 710, well, this says $243 million. For residents, we have elements like $26.5 million for laptops, tablets, or smartphones to our seniors, youth exiting foster care, families enrolled in TANF, and returning citizens. And we have a wide variety of programs for businesses and for neighborhood assistance. There's one that's important to us at Office of Planning. We house the Food Policy Council, $57.7 million to expand access to grocery stores and sit-down restaurants in Wards 7 and 8 over the next 3 years. We have, including over $2 million for a fund that we are working with Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development on, called Nourish DC, to support local food oriented businesses, especially in underserved areas and underserved residents. There's money to increase Great Street, 8.1 million to increase Great Streets and commercial ownership opportunities for small business and to support Shop in the District. $14 million for enhanced placemaking and public space vibrancy in critical commercial corridors. $5 million to Events DC and Destination DC to promote and attract tourism, and $900,000 for activations across all four quadrants in the district in the summer of 2021. And I think it's all 8 wards across the city over the whole fiscal year. On transportation and the environment, $431 million, including 72 to support healthier homes and schools through expanded weatherization and energy efficiency retrofits, lead paint and mold remediation, lead placement, and solar energy installations. $350 million for streetscapes, trails, and Vision Zero traffic safety improvements, including completion of the DuPont Crown Park and a new South Capitol Street trail to Maryland's National Harbor. And 30 miles of protected bike lanes over the next 3 years, which is double the current planned investments. Capital improvements, I guess I got ahead of myself a little bit, but 40 modernized, this is $8.8 billion, 40 modernized, expanded, or renovated schools, full funding for all the remaining library modernizations. I'll just put a note, I've been able to visit the new Martin Luther King Central Library. I encourage anyone to take a look. It's a beautiful, beautiful civic space for all of us. And finally, upgrades or major renovations to 20 recreational facilities and ADA accessibility compliance at all DPR facilities by the end of 2023. So that is a whirlwind of taking you through as much as some highlights of a large $17.5 billion budget. As I shared with you before, it's clear that you all are looking at it, are making sure that the investments are made that you've been looking at. A final note in terms of this ANC is additional funding to ensure the Bruce Monroe, to ensure Park Morton redevelopment can move forward. So that's $14.8 million in the capital budget, I believe. And so I think with that, I guess I will turn it over. I don't know if there's time for question and answer. I'd be happy to answer what I can, which typically leads more towards economic development planning and housing. But certainly whatever we cannot answer, we can follow up with, the MOKers can follow up with on.
Sure, absolutely, Director. I'm certainly not going to squander an opportunity for commissioners to ask you questions. So we'll always make time for that. And I will also say, if you ever want to come back for any other reason, we will always make time for you.
Thank you. I will say it was great to see some of you at the Spring Road announcement of the affordable housing funding a few weeks ago. So I know that I was actually, I was in the ANC physically, although I know it's on the border, but and I'd be happy to come back in the future as well.
Well, Director, I'll say, let Spring Road be a lesson to you. We're not going to let a pesky little thing like a border prevent us from being involved in something so substantial that's incredibly impactful to our community. I see Commissioner Ray has a hand up. I don't know if anyone else has put a hand up, but I'm looking quickly. So Commissioner Ray, you may as well ask your question while I'm checking to see if
Sure, thank you. And thank you, Director, for joining us. This question is in your wheelhouse, so I think it's a helpful one. You know, in terms of our planning and the way we're looking at development in the neighborhood, I'm curious, how does your office support the mayor in sort of determining, as the as we start to hit our goals of adding 36,000 new households in the next few years, how are we planning for how many schools we will need, how many fire department centers we will need? What is your office's role in that doings?
We play a role in that. I'll tell you, there's kind of an official role we play in terms of forecasting population growth and change based on our own data around development and working. We produce with the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments a cooperative forecast for the region based on expected regional growth and how that will be distributed. I think what we've all realized is that the last forecast was probably it was not ambitious enough in terms of what the growth pressures we had. And that's why one of the reasons we've seen housing prices increase. So both the mayor through her 36,000 goal and the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments have increased the number of housing units that were households that we're seeking to accommodate. So that's just something. But I'll tell you something more specific, and it was actually in the comprehensive plan update, which is to help coordinate our what we're calling our civic infrastructure and facilities. We call it Sci-Fi Civic Infrastructures and Facilities Initiative, but really working hand in hand with parks, with libraries, with schools, as well as other agencies like DGS and OCTO who are supporting these efforts. I think FEMS and MPD will be adding them later. They kind of look at it a little differently, but we are working with them very closely as the new comp plan is going through, as the new census data is coming in, to make sure that they have the latest forecasts around growth, so that they can plan for this, the next round of capital budgeting and investments that can be a part of their work.
Thank you. Are there other questions from commissioners?
I think
not seeing any. Oh, okay. Then
yep. Hi, thank you so much for coming today. I just had a quick question, and I'm not quite sure if this is in your wheelhouse or if this is something that you can answer. But I know that one thing that we've been pushing and advocating for, specifically in the space of youth homelessness, is that transitional housing. Again, the slides were so quick. I can't remember if you specifically, but I'm really thinking of that 1.3 million, which was a one-time funding replacing last year's one-time funding. Is there any way? I guess my question to you is, and maybe this is not a question that you can answer, but as we keep doing this year after year and having to fight for these one-time funding, how can we move towards getting that as recurring funding? And do you see, I guess I would just ask if you see the potential for replacement. Is there a reason we're only doing it at one-time funding and not having this as a consistent investment?
So when maybe I'm not familiar with the 1.3 million one-time funding. Could you just?
It's for the.
For the what? I'm sorry.
Christine, your mic's not working.
Yep.
Line item that was, but it's for youth homeless and specifically for transitional housing for youth.
Hey, Christine, I want to say the last 40 seconds of what you said over again. You think you're blocking your mic?
No, my hands are up here, I swear.
I think I understood. So it's specific money for youth
yes, for
transitional housing. Okay.
And transitional housing supports, but it just every year it's a one-time.
I see.
Yeah.
So a couple things. I would be out over my skis to try and speak specifically to that question. I'm not as familiar with that. I do know there's significant funding to fund Homeward DC 2.0. Including additional vouchers, including funding for acquisition of housing and potential transitional housing. I believe $16 million or $30 million. I can't remember. See, once again, but there's significant funding. Now, I don't know this specific program, and I think it's something that we can follow up with you on. And certainly through, the difference between, I know this because I fight every year to get recurring planning money, and I always get one-time planning money. One-time money is easier to come by than recurring. But I think those are important things to raise, for the mayor, for the budget team, and the council.
Oh, no, that's great. Thank you. I appreciate that answer. And we'll look more into it, and I may even just follow up with you.
Yeah, please do. If I can definitely, I am proud that we work very closely with our partners across the housing spectrum and those who deal with our unhoused residents. And so I've been working very closely with them, mostly around some acquisition ideas and opportunities.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Okay,
So I
looking
have
to
a
see if-
question.
Okay, and just before you go, Commissioner Loveway, did I also see that Commissioner Hall had a question?
Yeah, I don't know how to raise hand on my iPad though, but I do have one.
Okay, well then let's go to Commissioner Lovewade and then Commissioner Hall.
Hi, Director. Thank you for the beautiful report. I have a question with respect to the increased housing. What accommodations are being made for parking? As you may be aware, we are losing hundreds of parking spaces within our ANC alone. And as you increase housing units and population, there's very little accommodation for the residents, and it's becoming a major, major problem, especially in this neighborhood.
So thank you for that question. I think what we have really focused on, especially at the comp plan, is creating housing opportunities, are really focusing on additional density at transit-rich areas. If you look at areas like Upper Wisconsin Avenue, or along major transit corridor like the Red Line, that's where a lot of the new housing we see happening. And I think the intention there is reduction of need for cars for the new that type of housing. So I think it's the intention is that we create great multimodal spaces where people will not be as reliant on cars. That is both. It falls within a couple of goals: greenhouse gas reduction, congestion reduction, as well as I think financially we have to, it's very expensive for parking, and we want to try and produce housing that is more affordable to more people, and sometimes that might be less parking.
Okay, so everybody should probably just start selling their cars.
Correct.
Well,
Correct, Addie.
I did survive the past decade without a car, living on top of the metro station. So thank you very much.
Okay, Commissioner Hall, you have a question.
Yeah, Mr. Trueblood, how much of the budget for the gun violence prevention program and the violence interrupters is earmarked for auditing of them and to determine the effectiveness of the programs?
That is something is definitely beyond my level of knowledge, but we can get back to you on that. Okay,
that's been a pretty big point of contention for the ANC, trying to figure out how this is working. So we'd like to have some more information.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions from commissioners? I'm looking for hands up. I'm not seeing any, so if I'm going to reserve the right to ask a final question, which is a little bit comp plan, but I think it also gets to some of the points that were made by Commissioner Lovewade as well. And that is, unless I'm mistaken, one of the things that came out of the comprehensive plan when it passed was an emphasis on more small area plans. It's been my experience that small area plans tend to take a lot of time, and by the time you start to implement them, things have changed so significantly that oftentimes they don't get implemented. So I'm kind of curious about how that's going to tax your resources and what you might be doing to perhaps streamline the process so that we're actually getting something better out of engagement like that.
Thank you for that. I would say for those who are at the announcement at Spring Road, you heard the mayor maybe talk about, I think she called them like express small area plans or something. I think we all agree that 2 years or more is a long time. That being said, small area plans require a mayor's hearing. They require to go to council. There's 6 to 9 months just of process. That's before you get into any just engagement with the community, analysis, or other things. So I'd say we're thinking about this in 2 ways. Number one, in the comp plan, our small area planning efforts will really be focused where there are major land use changes that are proposed, well, that have now been implemented, will be implemented, that have been kind of put into the plan. These are areas we call planning focus areas. Future planning analysis areas is actually what they're technically called. So really focusing that small area plan, which is about those land use changes on those areas. But the point is what we want to try and ensure that our small area plans are scoped narrowly to the issues that we're facing. So in Chevy Chase, it's about how do you support retail, but also a small amount of potential housing above that retail, make a main street. So that's one thing. But more importantly, and I'm not sure ANC 1A is in one of those planning analysis areas. I don't think there's a great deal of land use changes, but there are other things, other tools that we like to use and we talk about these. So not everything has to be a small area plan. There can be design guidelines. There can be streetscape work. There can be public, we do public life studies. We did a great one in Tenleytown a few years back. And so I think depending on the challenges, that could be an analysis for OP, or if it's a transportation related one, OP in partnership with DDOT. So around livability studies, for example. So I think what we're trying to do is really make sure that our efforts are tailored to the specific area, the needs of a specific place. And that's how we can make sure we can do more. We can cover more areas and not get bogged down with giant small area plans.
Thank you, Director. I appreciate that. And as you know, we're not shy about reaching out to ask for targeted conversations, and we may want to do that throughout the year as well. That said, I don't see any other hands raised, and I know that we've given you a significant amount of time. So thank you for giving us your time and answering our questions, and most importantly, for getting answers to some of the questions that came up tonight that were beyond your wheelhouse. We appreciate your willingness to make those connections.
Thank you all for having me.
Absolutely. Don't be a stranger. That said, we can now move on to the next presentation, which is Nicole McEntee, Office of the Tenant Advocate, Resources for Tenants and Tenant Protections. Do we have a member from the Office of the Tenant Advocate with us tonight?
Hi, sorry,
Oh,
it took me
perfect.
a minute to start my video. Thank you so much. Do you mind if I share my screen?
I don't mind at all, no.
Okay, great. Let me
Let's see if you can, there we go.
Okay, perfect. So thank you for having me. I'm Nicole McEntee. I'm with the Office of the Tenant Advocate. And we've been making the rounds kind of to, I think 13 ANCs now across the city, trying to spread the word before the end of the public health emergency as to how we can help tenants and what resources we actually provide to tenants, because a lot of people are unaware that our office exists. We are an independent agency, but we are a part of DC government. And most importantly, we offer free services to anyone who is a tenant within the District of Columbia. So even if you are low income or you pay market rate, or you're on a voucher, or you're in rent controlled or not rent controlled, doesn't matter. As long as you're a tenant in DC, you can call our office for help. So that's kind of the key point that I want to make sure everyone gets out of this tonight. But anyway, we consist of sort of 4 different departments here. So I'm with education and outreach, and the stuff we do is basically what I'm doing tonight, which is going out and talking to people about what we do. We also have legal representation, policy advocacy, and emergency housing. I'll talk a little bit about each. So legal representation, this is mostly the department that tenants kind of come into contact with when they reach out to us if they're having an issue. So we provide technical advice and legal services to tenants regarding disputes with landlords. And most importantly, we have attorney advisors that tenants can talk to for free. So if you're a tenant in DC and say you haven't gotten your security deposit back, or say your landlord is threatening to evict you, or you're having housing code violations, any of those sort of scenarios, you're having issues with your lease, anything along those lines, tenants can actually call our tenant hotline listed right here. It's 202-719-6560. So you can call that number and be connected with an attorney advisor or a case management specialist, and get free legal advice as to what to do on the situation with your landlord. So if you take nothing from my presentation tonight, please take that number down. It's 202-719-6560, or you can go to our website and fill out a Ask the Director form as well. So after you kind of call our office, you're assigned to either an attorney advisor or a case management specialist through intake, and you're assigned in the order in which you're received. We're getting a lot of calls lately as we approach the end of the public health emergency. So like hundreds a week. So it might not be an immediate response, but we're doing the best we can to get back to people, and we will call you back if we can't reach you immediately to help you out with your situation. Our policy advocacy team, mostly they draft legislation and testimony to council. So that's sort of their major role. And they played a significant role in some of the legislation that's changed during the public health emergency in favor of tenants. So here are some significant bills that have come out lately, and especially during the public health emergency. The Tenant Bill of Rights Amendment Act of 2014. This required all landlords to give every tenant a document that's called the Tenant Bill of Rights. And it lists 14 different rights that tenants have in the district in pretty plain language instead of legalese. So this is a document that if you're a tenant, your landlord should have given you this. We have copies of it on our website if you don't have a copy of it. But part of this legislation requiring this came from our office. The Fair Criminal Record Screening Housing Act said that you can't inquire about criminal background until after you've screened and offered a conditional offer. So usually that means running your credit check first and doing your references first. The Fairness in Renting Act of 2021. This is extremely recent, and this went into effect during the public health emergency. So we haven't quite seen the effects of it yet, but we're excited too, because it means that landlords will be prohibited from filing for eviction on tenants who owe less than $600 in rent. And then, of course, the public health emergency legislation. Hopefully everybody is aware that evictions are prohibited until after the end of the public health emergency, except in a very rare sort of carve out for public safety issues. And then also no rent increases are allowed during the public health emergency until 30 days after it ends. So hopefully those are things that people are well aware of. Again, no evictions except for a tiny carve out, and no rent increases until after the end of the public health emergency. Our educational department, that's me and my colleague Cristobal, and we do basically stuff like this. So we talk to ANCs, we do webinars and trainings. We try to connect with as many sort of tenants and tenant groups and community-based organizations that we can to make sure that people are aware that we're here and we're here to help people. We also host a training called a Renters' Rights 101 training. That's once a month, and the next one is going to be on the 17th of June. That's a Thursday. So if you're interested in signing up for this free training, it's about an hour long, and we go through basically everything from signing your lease to what is rent control to what's the eviction process and how does that work. And everything in between. So if you're interested in that training, once I'm done talking, I'll put my information in the chat box so you can send me an email. And I'll also put the tenant hotline phone number as well. A couple other updates from our office. The public health emergency that I keep talking about, that's been extended to July 25th. We don't know if it will be extended again or not. It's been extended, I think 4 or 5 times now, but this might be the final one. We don't know. So we're treating it as though that is the end all be all date until we hear otherwise. Additionally, Stay DC, I know a lot of agencies, including Director Trueblood, have been mentioning Stay DC, and we are as well, simply because it's a eviction prevention mechanism that we encourage tenants to try to use, if at all possible, if they think they might be at risk of eviction when the public health emergency ends. And then lastly, the thing I'll talk about is the Rent Control Clearinghouse database. That's something that our office has been working on for a little over a year now. We were a little disrupted due to COVID, but ultimately what that's going to be is a database accessible online for anybody to check online and see what units are rent controlled in the city and which ones are not rent controlled, as well as what the past rent increases have been over several years on these units, and what units are available that are rent controlled at any given point. So this is a database that our office is working on. This data exists, but essentially it's on paper. It's more or less handwritten, right? And nobody's ever actually put it into a database and made it accessible in an online format. So that's a project we're working on, and we anticipate that it'll be ready and maybe for the beta testing around the fall, and ideally by the end of the year, it would be ready for actual use. So as we have more updates on that, we plan to go around to ANCs and share that information, because we think this will be an amazing tool for tenants to make sure they're paying, the right amount of rent, first of all, and also if they're looking for a unit to see, where rent controlled units can be found. So that's pretty much all I have. I included some helpful links here as well. These all link to our website though. So really, if you just go to ota.dc.gov, you can find additional information there. But the Tenant Bill of Rights is on there. Housing assistance documentation is on there. And then our educational institutes, so the sort of, webinars and tutorials that we produce from my department are on there as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has. Once I'm done answering questions again, I will put my contact information in the chat, as well as that tenant hotline phone number. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking to see if there are any questions from commissioners. I think I see one from Commissioner Lehman Morales. So I'll let him go first while I'm looking for others.
Ms. McEntee, thank you for your time tonight and coming to our ANC to brief us on the Tenants Advocate Office. My question is about the State DC program, which you mentioned briefly in your presentation. So with State DC, as I'm sure you're familiar in your line of work, the program itself has been kind of cumbersome for applicants to fill out, and especially our residents who are not native speakers. I've personally had experience assisting, residents who are non-native speakers filling out their applications, and from that experience alone, I can attest that it's very cumbersome. So I can only imagine what it's like, for someone doing it on their own. So that leads me to my question. So does your office do any sort of outreach or assistance to residents who have questions on the State DC program and application? I know other outside groups have kind of taken it upon themselves to fill in that gap where the local government has failed. So I wanted to ask if the OTA is also doing any sort of similar assistance or outreach to residents who may need assistance with filling out the State DC application, or we just want to have more information on the program.
Yes, that's a great question. Yes, thank you. And the answer is yes. So we've heard the same thing that you just told me, essentially. I mean, when tenants call our hotline phone number, they're calling for resident issues, lease issues, but also we've had people calling because they're trying to do State DC, and maybe they've heard of the program, but there are so many sort of barriers they feel in between, starting the application and actually getting the funds that, they're very dissuaded or they're concerned about it. So we've absolutely heard that. So, we distribute flyers to the community. We've done it in person, and we also do it digitally and through Capital Area Food Bank and a couple other food distribution sources, and through ANCs. And some of the flyers do have information about State DC, but directly in response to the concern you raised, where people are having a lot of issues kind of taking the time to fill it out because it's so cumbersome, we actually created a document called State DC Instructions, more or less, which is basically a fill in the blank document where you hand your landlord pages 1, 2, and 3, and you say, landlord, I need you to fill out all of these pages. And once you've had your landlord fill those out, you fill out page 4 as the tenant. And then when you take that document, you're armed to basically plug and play when you go online to fill out the State DC form. So that was sort of a response we came up with to help address that issue, because a lot of people, they'll start the application online and realize they need 17 forms and they need the landlord's corporate office address, and they don't know that, so this was sort of a method that we came up with, where if you can kind of have your landlord fill out 3/4 of it on their own and give it back to you, you can just plug in those answers for the most part when you go online. So that form, we're trying to get it up on the website, but it takes a while sometimes for Okta to upload on the website. So if you need a copy of it, I'm happy to send it to the ANC as well. And you did mention people who don't speak English. So my colleague Cristobal is actually fluent in Spanish. So he's able to help people as well. I myself am not, but I sent people to him. And we haven't translated that document into Spanish yet, but that's certainly something we can do if there's a high need for that, for sure.
Quick follow-up. So just quick on what you mentioned just now. If we want to redirect residents to your office for assistance who are not native speakers, is there somewhere on the website or if like a phone number, email that we can give them? Because in the meantime, what I've been doing is I've been redirecting people to MOLA, to the Office of Latin and Latino Affairs. So if you have something that I could also use or that we could use in the commission to kind of hand out, I know you mentioned that the form is not up yet, but if you had something in the meantime that we could potentially give out to residents, that'd be really appreciated.
Yes, we do. We actually have a couple of Spanish translated flyers. And if you call our tenant hotline number and you call after hours, you can actually leave a voicemail in Spanish, and that'll get to some of our Spanish speaking case management specialists as well. So yes, we do have several Spanish speaking employees in the office who can certainly help. And MOLA, of course, is a great resource as well. They will also help you out.
Okay, thank you. Great questions. Are there any other questions from commissioners? I actually have one, but I don't need to go right now. I will if no other commissioners have a question. And that is kind of in line with some of what's been discussed so far. I'm also wondering about any tailoring you may do to, for instance, seniors or other communities that may be taken advantage for or targeted for scams and things like that. I know in the past, I'm more experienced with home ownership, people who own their own home than tenants, but I do know that many of the forms are confusing. It's not easy, and sometimes there's a requirement for individuals who don't necessarily have the ability to travel to an office to go to an office. And so what resources are available to perhaps come out to the community? I don't know if you're partnering with senior wellness centers. And I'm also kind of curious when new housing comes online, since Spring Flats was mentioned earlier, which has a significant number of new senior housing units included in it. Is there any kind of outreach to people moving into new buildings that maybe didn't exist a year ago, where there are going to be significant populations of tenants? How do you make those connections?
That's a great question. So obviously during COVID, it's been hard to go in person. So we've actually had several Zoom meetings with senior buildings and buildings with a lot of elderly tenants. And those were actually pretty successful. We had, a high turnout and people were able to figure out how to make it work. And that was wonderful. But, myself and my colleague are both vaccinated. And we are both now able to go, and do in-person outreach. And we plan to do a lot of that. One of the hard things, especially like you mentioned with Spring Flats, though, is that if there's no active tenant organization or sort of like tenant president to reach out to, when we show up at a building, often a management company, isn't as receptive, right? Because we serve tenants, and we don't serve landlords. So that's kind of a challenge is, finding a receptive property management company. But, if you have any tenants that specifically, especially senior tenants who would like us to come to the building, please have them get in touch with us, or please send us, their phone number, because we're happy to call and arrange that. It's hard, especially during COVID to get boots on the ground to literally, find people for that. But certainly if you have any leads, please let us know, and we're happy to do that.
Thank you for that. We may have a follow-up conversation as I think about this a little bit more deeply.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Looking quickly. Oh, I see we have a question from Commissioner Gorpade.
Yes. Thank you so much, Nicole, for being with us. And if I can just say, Nicole has been super helpful for a couple of my young people that I work with in just helping me navigate some housing issues. So I cannot say enough that call their hotline, they will help you. But I am a little curious about the Stay DC program. I'm still getting to understand it and figuring out how I can help folks sign up. Do you have any idea, just based off of your conversations with tenants, what the timeline looks like for that? So between when folks actually apply and then when they get the funding, how long does that take? Because people don't have indefinite time.
Yep, that's a good question. So DHCD administers the program, and we've had a couple of meetings with them as this program has kind of evolved. And the first meeting we had with them, the federal government had not actually provided the funds yet for them to be distributed. And this was roughly like 25, 30-ish days after the program had sort of formally happened. But since then, they have been able to distribute funds, we've been told. And something like, I think it was like 900 applicants have received funds as of the end of May. It was the number they gave us, somewhere around there, if I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head. So people are getting it, and our understanding is that there was a delay at the beginning, partially because the federal government hadn't distributed funds to really anybody. There was kind of a delay in that. But once you apply now, I have heard that there is still some delay. So part of the reason is that the tenant has to fill out their portion, and then you have to wait on the landlord to respond for anywhere between 5 and 10 days to fill out their portion. And between that delay, and then if something doesn't cooperate between what the landlord says and the tenant says, then somebody has to review it and find more information and ask for more documents. So all of those things in the procedure do cause delay. So DHCD in talks with us has said, we just want to encourage everybody to get your application in, even if it's not 100% correct, because then at least you're sort of in the system and we can contact you and work you through the rest of it. But we don't want anybody to not apply because they're discouraged because they think it'll take a while. It does take some time to sit there and apply, but if there's money coming at the end of it, I think hopefully it's worth it for people. But again, if you're having people with huge issues where they haven't heard, in an extremely long time, or they were rejected for whatever reason and never got a response from whatever reason, definitely have them call our office and we can either get them in touch with DHCD or help them to sort of find out what's going on there.
Okay, thank you so much. That's very helpful.
There we go. Thank you. One more quick pass. I don't see any other questions or hands raised, and I don't see any hands raised in attendees. So with that, I will thank you for your time. I'm sure we will have some follow-up questions for you. Thank you for the number. I believe it was 719-6560.
Yes,
so
and I'll put it in the chat as well. I'll put that in there right now.
Perfect. I appreciate it. With that said, we will now move on to, I believe I saw Oscar Montiel from Councilmember Nadeau's office. We will bring him up and welcome him to the presentation section.
Hello,
Welcome.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name
Good
is
evening, welcome.
Oscar Montiel, and I am the Director of Constituent Services for Ward 1, Councilmember Nadeau's office. I will be filling in for Ali Bobak tonight, and I just have a few updates. On the Local Resident Voting Rights Act, today, the councilmember introduced the Local Resident Voting Rights Amendment Act. The legislation amends the District of Columbia Election Code of 1955 to expand the definition of the term qualified elector to include permanent residents for the purpose of local elections. Permanent residents will be able to vote in elections for mayor, DC Council, State Board of Education, advisory neighborhood commissions, and attorney general. Every day, elected officials are making decisions about affordable housing, education, human services, and more. Local government became even more consequential during the pandemic as decisions were being made that greatly impacted the health and safety of permanent residents in the District of Columbia. Council members Alyssa Silverman, Robert White, Christina Henderson, Brooke Pinto, Janice Lewis George, and Charles Allen are co-introducing the legislation. On budget oversight, we are in the early part of budget season. Committees are conducting hearings for agencies. Hearings are listed on the DC Council US website. We encourage you to testify or submit testimony. It's helpful to be able to point to testimony from Ward 1 residents when we are advocating for more resources for the ward. It's also helpful for the at-large council members to hear from Ward 1 residents. A big one that is coming up is the Department of Human Services. The council member will be chairing this hearing on Monday. If you have concerns or feedback on how the district is handling issues around homelessness, we hope you will testify. And regarding community, we're excited that it is now safer to have some in-person events while still taking precautions, of course. The council member has been visiting our local businesses as they adjust to operating at full capacity again. And we're coordinating walkthroughs for each SMD with ANCs to get a comprehensive look at issues in Ward 1 neighborhoods and help address those. We're also in the process of planning some summer events, so stay tuned. If you are planning an event and would like for our staff or the council member to join you, please let us know. If you haven't signed up for our newsletter, be sure to sign up. We send regular updates on both council business and community events. You can also send me your email in the chat and I can add you to our list. And I'll drop my email in the chat for those of you that might have some questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Oscar. Are there any questions for our council member's office? I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Commissioner Bass, I have a quick question.
Absolutely.
Hi, thanks, Oscar.
right.
Wait, hello, am I muted? No. Hello?
No, you're good to go, Commissioner Miller. And then I see Commissioner Lehman Morales has his hands up too, but we'll start with you, Commissioner Miller.
Great. So thank you, Oscar, for coming. It's good to see a fresh face, although we miss Allie. A quick question, because I know that the legislation the council member introduced today echoes previous iterations of that, including one that our ANC supported. Is this the same resolution that was passed in 2017, or not, excuse me, the same legislation that was, or the same bill that was introduced, or similar to the same bill introduced in 2017 for the Voting Rights Act?
I don't think so. But
do you know where the differences are?
No, but I'd be more than happy to connect you with somebody in our committee.
Okay.
That can address questions.
Yeah, I mean, if you could just send me a copy of the bill that was introduced, that'd be great. That would solve it.
I'll go ahead and do that.
Great, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Thank you. Commissioner Lehman Morales.
Hi, Oscar. Thank you for coming to here tonight and speaking with us. I had a quick question going off of what we've been talking about earlier on the CDC program. I had previously reached out to Allie, so I don't know if she filled in before she left for out of office, but I had reached out to her to ask if the council member's office or just the council in general was working on making access to the state DC program more accessible in terms of like pop-up registration workshops, or just like more in the community sort of access that residents could use to sign up for CDC. She had mentioned something in her response to me that we could probably be expecting more of it towards that goal. So I just wanted to ask you if you had any sort of update on that end in terms of making the state DC program more accessible generally to people in Ward 1, and just like in terms of having either members from your office or the council more broadly just coming into the communities themselves and like offering assistance to residents who, you know, not only are non-native speakers, but also, you know, just are very confused or have questions about the application process itself.
Yeah, so we're in the process of coordinating an event with the Office of Latino Affairs. From my understanding, we're trying to have something at Cardozo High School in the next couple of weeks. And that'll be a great opportunity for folks to stop by and get some assistance for the state DC. And also, they're trying to partner up to have COVID vaccinations on site as well. So that's something that we're working on, and I'd be more than happy to share that information with you once I have it.
Thank you. I don't see any hands raised there, but I do see one from phone number 456. If we could bring that question up and grant permission to talk. And if it was to an earlier presentation, let me know that as well, and we'll get that information.
Hi, can you hear me? This is Carolyn Matthews from Ward 1.
We can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you. My question to Oscar is this. I called the other day. I'm concerned about a couple of things. We're not getting parking enforcement in our area, especially 1A08. That's one issue, especially during street sweeping time. Street sweeping time, and according to the sign, we're supposed to get parking up until 8:30 at night, which we do not. We have a serious problem with out-of-state tags that belongs to quite a few drug dealers. And we have been collaborating with other agencies to address these issues up here. But it seems like the Department of Public Works, and especially the director, hasn't been very forthcoming. My second issue is what is happening with the vending of food at 14th and Irving, especially on Sundays. It seems like it's an open marketplace for people that do not have the permit to operate the selling of the food there. So those are my concerns. And I called the office and left a couple of messages before, but I haven't heard back from anyone.
Hi, Ms. Matthews. Thank you for sharing those concerns. So that specific area that you're talking about is not the only area that we've been hearing these concerns about, especially as it relates to DPW and parking enforcement. Soon, well, I don't want to say soon, but I will be reaching out to DPW just to give them a list of these areas where they can come out and be more attentive to. Now, for the food vending on 14th and Irving, when Ali returns, I can have Ali give you more information on what's going on there.
That's unacceptable for me, because this is an issue that I have been bringing up for months. If it was an African American out there vending, or African American children out there vending, they have gotten stopped or they have gotten a fine. It is not fair that we are allowing certain groups to get a pass. And the only thing that I'm hearing that we're working with them, well, DCRA, the Department of Health, has been up there on the weekends. They told them to stop and desist, but they still are doing it. As a matter of fact, I know for a fact that 6 o'clock in the morning, they're setting up shop during the week. So this is an ongoing issue. And no one is giving me a satisfactory answer. It's not fair. There are resources available for them to go through, just like I went through for the food manager's permit. Why can't it be the same across the board? This is not right. And the answer you're giving me is not satisfactory.
Ms. Matthews, I've gone through Columbia Heights, and I can assure you that there are folks from all walks of life selling food and other items there. So it's not just a specific group selling items there. Okay.
Mr. Montiel, what I would like to recommend is, can you get the right resources from your office to have a deep and meaningful conversation with Ms. Matthews, because I know this has been a longstanding concern of hers. That said, it's a good opportunity to bring added attention to the parking enforcement and why. And we will bring this up with Moises del Rosario as well. The reason parking enforcement is so critically important right now, particularly on blocks like Newton and the 400 and 500 blocks of Otis and some of the other blocks, is because they are essentially becoming open air drug markets with out of district cars parking there all day to conduct business by essentially using our community as their storefront. It creates a public safety issue. It feeds into behavioral and mental health. It's just a powder keg waiting to go. And getting back to some of the things that have been said earlier at this meeting, we do not expect MPD to solve all of this or to arrest our way out of this, but we do expect every agency to do their part in collaboration and coordination to holistically get on top of these problems. And parking enforcement is a small part of that. But I'll say a small part of it, but it's going to have a significant impact. And so I think that has to be taken into consideration as well, because there are a lot of services and agencies that were essentially suspended operations during the pandemic, and it has allowed many blocks that have historically had drug activity, but not in recent history. Many of them have backslid, and now we're kind of starting over. So that's another aspect of why it's so critically important to have DPW in coordination with others so that their staff are safe, but to do their job. So I just want to underscore that. It's not a minor request.
So I did talk with DPW this week, and they, because I have concerns as well about no parking during rush hour and things like that. And the longer we get past June 1st, the more likely people will not move their vehicles, right? So what they did tell me, with kind of a little bit of a snarky response from them, was that we haven't done it for 15 months. It takes a while to get back in full swing. They said that they don't tow cars, they relocate them. And if there are no spaces to relocate because more people are working from home, they have no place to put the cars. So that's another issue too, is how we're going to fix this problem with people working from home, no place to move the cars when they need to be towed, right? They need to be relocated during these zones. So they just get left there. And that's, I think, exacerbating our problem.
Again, if it's a car being used by, well, I'm just saying if it's a car being used by a drug dealer, they are likely sitting in their car all day. And many of these cars don't just have out-of-state tags, they have temporary out-of-state tags that many of them have been photocopied over and over and over again. They're not even valid tags. That's a completely different beast than someone who just perhaps moved here 6 months ago, didn't change their tags and don't know where to move the car. So I think there's some discernment that's needed.
And that's just the beginning of the problem associated with reinstituting the rush hour lanes, people still working from home, parking spaces being removed by VDOT and DPW. We're being squeezed in this community like I've never seen before. So all of it is an issue. All of these issues dovetail together to start to totally impact the quality of life of the residents of 1A. I mean, everything it seems like it's dovetailing right here on us.
Completely agree, Commissioner Wade.
Okay. Do another quick pass. See if there's any commissioners with additional questions. I do not see any. So if your hand is up, please say something. I do not see a new hand up from the community. So with that, I will thank you for your time tonight, and we will move on to Moises del Rosario from the mayor's office.
Thank you.
Can you hear me okay?
We can. Welcome, Moises.
Thank you so much. Good evening, ANC 1A. As always, it's a pleasure to be here. I don't have any specific updates, but I do have a few quick reminders. Before I go into that, however, I do want to talk about the DPW and the parking enforcement. We did just have a meeting with Chairman Bass, specifically on the 700 block of Otis Place Northwest. However, as Oscar mentioned, as I'm sure ANC Commissioner and his neighbors know, this is an isolated incident within Otis Place, and it is something that we've seen throughout the ward. And one thing MPD was on that call, one thing that MPD did mention was having a joint partnership with our parking enforcement officers for those areas that have those open drug markets. So that way we can still have that parking enforcement, but also, do it in a safe way. So I'll be more than happy to facilitate a conversation with any commissioners as progress is made on that end. As far as it goes as updates, I do have a few quick reminders. Today, Mayor Bowser did announce that on Friday, June 11th at 1 p.m., she'll be hosting a conversation with Dr. Fauci and other local healthcare leaders about the urgency to get all eligible individuals vaccinated against COVID-19. The mayor and Dr. Fauci will be joined in conversation by Dr. Shelley Pinkett, that's the Chief Medical Officer at Howard University Hospital, Dr. LaQuandra Nesbitt, the Director of DC Health, and Dr. Kurt Newman, the President and CEO of the Children's National Hospital. During this conversation, they'll be talking about vaccine hesitancy and efficacy, youth vaccinations and the rise in youth hospitalization rates, and the urgency to crush this virus and get more of our residents vaccinated. So the conversation is going to take place at the Town Hall Education Arts Recreation Campus that's in Mississippi Avenue Southeast. And I also put the link in the chat box below for any neighbors or commissioners that want to attend. Additionally, the second update or reminder that I have is that the mayor is also calling on community members to sign up for our third DC COVID-19 Community Day of Action. And that's going to be on Juneteenth, so Saturday, June 19th, with canvassing shifts starting at 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. The goal of each day of action is to engage with neighbors who have not yet been vaccinated against COVID-19 and help them make a plan to get vaccinated. So those of you who do want to participate and can learn more or register for the day of action at the link that I'll provide in the chat box. At the last day of action, we had over 100 volunteers, and we were able to have over 1,700 conversations with Ward 1 residents about making a plan to get vaccinated. So ANC 1A is always definitely willing to participate. So I do appreciate the commission and also the neighbors that were able to attend. And that's the only updates that I have at the moment. I'm happy to take any questions. I do know that we had the budget presentation today, and though Director Trueblood was able to talk about some things that are directly related to the comprehensive plan, if commissioners have any questions about specific investments in the ward, please feel free to send me those questions and I'll follow up with our agency partners and get you some additional information. And with that, I'll put everything in the chat box, and thank you so much for the time.
Okay, thank you, Moises. I see Commissioner Brown has her hand up.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Bass. Moises, thank you so much for joining us at our meeting today and for the update. And for all of the great work that you've done with the Mary Lou Alley, Jones Alley. I just wanted to commend you for coordinating multiple agencies to really clean up that space. I think the neighbors have seen some improvement. And also I wanted to thank you for all of your support on the Parkview signage cleanup. Neighbors were really happy that you came out and were able to troubleshoot some issues and offer up some support materials that day. I have a question about the youth vaccinations. By any chance, do you know where the district is with youth vaccinations to date? Or just any count that you may have on hand?
I don't have any specific number about how the rate of youth that's been vaccinated. I do know that they released that 70 or 68% as of 2 days ago of DC residents have received their first or second dose. But I can follow up with you and I'll try to get you an actual number if they have a breakdown. And just for your first part, as you already know, I'm a Parkview native, so it's always my pleasure, Commissioner Brown, to help as I can. And I did also see the email. I see that neighbors are coordinating a alley party, and I'll definitely be there. And I'll also invite our agency partners so they can attend as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yes,
They'll be
ma'am.
happy to hear that, and happy to see you join us.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Let me look real quick to see if there are any other questions for you. I will say that while I don't see any, you heard the conversation about DPW. I know you've already made a statement, but I would like to follow up with you after this as well, just on some of those specific blocks that are troubling the neighborhood.
And if I could quickly add, Lieutenant Markowitz, that was actually on the call, since he was new to 3D, we're actually planning some community walks, but also that's going to be our point of contact to coordinate that partnership between parking enforcement and MPD. So he was actually at our ANC 1D meeting. I'm very happy that he was able to introduce himself tonight. But I'm more than willing to have that conversation with you, Chairman, and also our MPD partners, so how we can help.
Okay, well, that's great. But as you know, my single member district, as well as Commissioner Ray's and Commissioner Brown's, is in the 4th district. So if you can find a 4D equivalent, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. That said, we can now move on to the consent agenda. As amended earlier, the consent agenda has a letter of support for a request for traffic calming and signage on the 600 and 700 blocks of Otis Place, a letter of support for traffic assessment, safety assessment at the intersection of Sherman Avenue and Lamont, a letter of support for traffic assessment, safety assessment and installation of speed bumps on Holmead Place between Oak and Spring, and authorization for Commissioner Miller to testify on behalf of ANC 1A regarding education and youth related requests previously approved by ANC 1A. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Moving on to official business. The first item is BZA case 20425 at 616 Quebec Place Northwest. Commissioner Ray, as the ZPP committee, would you like to introduce this item?
Sure, very much happy to. Can you please bring up R. Michael Cross? He is the architect on this project. 616 Quebec Place is in Commissioner Base's district. It is a conversion of a single family home into 3 units. And we have at the committee reviewed this a number of times. It has been, I would say, somewhat controversial, particularly because there has been an ongoing question about the height of the basement and or cellar, which has an impact on, how much building can be done at this location. So as we review this, I'll remind you that we did actually vote once already because we were not pleased with the plans and they gone back and made some changes. However, I will just give you the heads up that we're still somewhat in a conundrum about this height issue, which I'm sure the architect will give us some more information on, and then we will see where we are. But Michael, are you able to share your screen or do you need somebody else on the call?
Yeah, I'm able to share my screen. I don't have that option just yet in Zoom.
Give me 1 second.
We see it, in case you're wondering.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. So we're seeking relief, special exception relief for a 3-unit conversion in the RF1 zone pursuant to subtitle U 320.2. The project is being proposed at 616 Quebec Place Northwest, which is on the south side of the block between Warder Road and Park Place. The project as proposed is conforming with the requirements for conversion as it proposes no modification of rooftop elements. It will be providing 2 parking spaces as required and maintains the existing footprint and does not propose any new rear addition. We also have permission from the neighbor to extend the chimney at 618 Quebec Place Northwest. Based on the feedback we received to date, we have made some revisions. We eliminated the parapet around the top of the building to overall lower the effective building height. We also changed the design to be a more traditional look, converting the windows to double hung windows and changing the siding to a combination of board and batten, as well as a traditional lap siding. We also reduced the number of windows along the alley side of the 3rd story in order to provide additional neighbor privacy. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah, actually,
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, let me just ask one quick question.
Absolutely.
I know that there are neighbors that have been added as parties and that they have submitted documentation into the file that they are, they're in opposition to the case, and that has an impact on us only in that regardless then of how we vote tonight, there is a party in opposition, and that has, that means something to the BZA. So do you know of any information where the neighbors have, come around or are planning to change their opposition? Do you know that for any reason?
I don't. I guess I am also aware of the party status opposition and the effect that has, but I don't know of any change of heart from any of those parties.
Thank you.
So a question I have is several weeks ago, Commissioner Ray and myself met with you and Mr. Husbands, who is the original surveyor from a survey back in November, I believe it was the end of November of 2020, and pointed out some areas where we had some concerns. We don't feel that the building height measuring point has been measured correctly. It was our understanding following that conversation that additional measurements would be taken and that update would be shared with us. To date, I've asked twice for that update and it has not been forthcoming. Can you address that, please?
Sure. We did agree to have that remeasured, and we did have it remeasured. As you stated, we disagree on the location of the building height measuring point. The location that you have suggested is the building height measuring point may in fact be greater than 5 feet below the first floor. However, since that time, we have obtained a building permit suggesting that the building height measuring point that we originally suggested was in fact accurate, as that was the building height measuring point submitted for the building permit for the additional story without the 3-unit conversion.
Well, I will just make a statement that we all know DCRA is not infallible, and I do believe they've made an error in this case because I have it directly from the zoning enforcement officer that in a condition such as your property, where the space under the front porch is interior space greater than 4 feet, and in your case, it's livable, habitable space, that would then mean that the building height measuring point would have to be measured at the front of the porch, not, and part of that is because it also has to be measured where the facade meets the grade. Your building height measuring point, which is an error, is a derived measurement based on an average of 2 points, and it's floating inside interior space. And I have confirmation from DCRA that it cannot exist in an interior space. So since you've stated that the point that we have identified as the appropriate place is over 5 feet, then this project in its entirety is in violation of zoning. So I don't see how we can support it. My recommendation would be, based on the report I have submitted earlier to the commission, is to oppose all zoning relief requested for this case. And I would further move that we issue an appeal for any building permit that may have been issued, so that we can address this directly with the zoning administrator before the Board of Zoning Adjustment to get the measurement accurate. And I do not do this lightly, because this is a condition that exists in many other structures within this neighborhood, and we need to get this correct, and we need DCRA to do their job without error, because this 4 months of back and forth has been completely unacceptable, and your unwillingness to share documentation that we have requested as a party is unacceptable.
I in no way intend to withhold information that's being requested. The information that was withheld because the call put into question the building height measuring point. And in that time, we effectively got an answer from DCRA in their approval of our building permit. So,
Mr. Cross, I understand what you're saying. I also understand where DCRA made their mistake, because in a follow-up conversation with them, they showed me your elevation, and they mistakenly suggested to me that your building height measuring point was at the front of the front porch, because that's where your height line is located. So they've misread your drawings. And if they've misread your drawings, that's on you for how you presented them. And in that case, we need to go back to DCRA. And therefore, my motion is to oppose all zoning relief in this case based on the inability to give us accurate data, and to appeal the issued building permit because it was issued in error.
I second it.
Any other discussion?
Sorry, I put my hand up. I think it was important information, though, for the commission to also understand. We only received the word about the permit issuance yesterday. So, Commissioner Bass, of course, right away has reached out to DCRA, and we have not been able to confirm with them, how they arrived at this permit. So, we are trying to catch up, and so I just want to make sure that that's also clear. This isn't something we've known for a while. We literally only learned it yesterday.
I second Chairman Bass's motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Love-Wade. Is there any further discussion or questions? Let me scroll through. Seeing none, let's take a vote.
Ken, sorry.
Yes.
What is the difference between what you think the height should be and what DCRA approved?
DCRA approved this because the building height measuring point that has been derived and inaccurately put on the survey, which in full disclosure at one time was an acceptable method, that as we know, they keep tinkering with zoning, is less than 5 feet. And if the lowest story is less than 5 feet, then it is a cellar and it doesn't count as a story. When measured correctly, again, this is going to be an estimate because despite repeatedly asking for this information, it has been denied to us. But it's essentially, when measured correctly, it's about 5'2", give or take, but it is above 5. So if it's above 5 feet, the lowest level counts as a story. And therefore, in this zone, a building can only be 3 stories, and this building is currently a 3-story building, which means for that addition on top to be constructed, it requires a zoning variance or a zoning relief. And this has not been requested. It's not a small thing. The building does conform, I believe, within the 35 to 40 foot range, which is also part of it, but it doesn't conform in the number of stories. And since we have several houses exactly like this, and all of these houses in this part of the section, all of them have livable, habitable space under the porch. This isn't an anomaly. This isn't an alteration that some homeowner in the last 100 years made. They were all constructed this way. The two people who live on Park Place, who are recognized parties in opposition, their homes were built this way because it's the same builder and the same architect. My house was built this way. These are not insignificant spaces. In my house, it's a bathroom and a laundry room. They are very large spaces. So to pretend that it doesn't exist and just derive a building height measuring point based on using a mathematical average, which is not allowed because it has to be where the facade meets the grade, it's really just flaunting the law. And if there's, and the zoning administrator in similar cases has already determined that the correct point to measure this is at the front of the porch. And that I also have that in writing from Mr. Bolden at DCRA. So
Okay, got it.
This
Thank you.
isn't us grasping at straws. This is a real thing.
You want to vote?
Any follow-up questions to that? Okay, then having been moved and seconded, all those in
There's
favor,
an attendee with their hand
say
up.
aye or raise your hand. Of course, it's going to be difficult. If Commissioner Rabarchik, if you can help me count on this, because I have signed
He
there.
actually could.
Chairman, there's
excuse me,
an
Don.
attendee with their hand up.
So I will say aye or raise your hand.
Can
Do
you remove the
oppose?
screen, architecture
Yes.
drawing screen?
Dom, could you please stop screen sharing?
All those opposed to the motion?
Oh, I don't
Whoa.
yet.
Any abstentions?
I don't know what's happening. Ken,
Commissioner Rabarchik, did you get?
Chair, Chairperson,
I can't hear you, Commissioner Ray.
Chairperson, we are not able to take the vote. There seems to be some confusion. Are you able to hear us? I think his internet might be cutting out. Commissioner Bonneau, you pointed out there's someone who had their hand up for quite some time. Dom, are we able to allow them to speak?
Hello. I was wondering if the chairman could say if there were any substantive objections that he had to the proposal, or is this all just fighting over 5 feet?
I don't believe he's heard your question, unfortunately.
So, I mean, I guess, obviously, I'm sure you all have heard these kinds
Sorry, did I lose sound?
Yeah, we lost
Yeah.
you there for a second. Can you hear us?
Commissioner Ray, do you want to tackle this question? Because I know an issue similar to this and an issue of enforcing the rules equitably has been raised before.
Yeah, I mean, we've had other cases. In fact, another case that we had just last month on Kenyon Street, you know, the developer wanted to add a 3rd story, but was unable to add a 3rd story, or I should say another story, because their 1st story, their cellar, their basement was deemed to be over the 5-foot limit. It's a matter of measurements. It is the rule, and the rule has to be applied evenly to all of the buildings. So we can't, you know, you can't apply for relief to add an initial story.
Am I back?
I've never seen it happen.
We can hear you, Ken.
Kent, are you back? Can you hear us?
So, I mean, it seems like the y'all are going to vote how you're going to vote, and it seems like a fait accompli. But I just want, for the record, I want to say that I think that having these multiple choke points and allowing you all to try to override DCRA, which is supposed to be the expert on this issue, is exactly why DC is having a housing crisis, because we can't develop the necessary supply. And so I just hope that you will consider systematically that if you nitpick here and nitpick there, the result of that is that there are going to be fewer available units. I would hope that you would be more attentive to that in the future.
Well,
But the solution is changing the law and allowing it to be applied evenly, not giving someone an exception for a mistake.
Yeah, I don't look at it nitpicking. I look at it observing the law and trying to apply it equitably across all applications. And as was mentioned, errors do occur. That is why we have the right to appeal. Also, it gives the builders rights to appeal. But this is not nitpicking. This is what we do. Our constituents expect us to uphold the law and to make adjustments as necessary. Our chairman has clearly stated that an exception has not been requested from you. Therefore, that is not on the board for us to vote. What has been presented is contrary to written statements we have received from DCRA and contrary to the existing zoning. So the fact that you don't appreciate the level of work that we have put in, we appreciate the level of work that you have put in for your development, but you need to appreciate the level of work that we have put in. We do not take this lightly. We work very hard with you. As you know, we have been working with you for months trying to come to an equitable solution. So I take exception to your statement.
So I have no affiliation.
And we do not nitpick. I want to be perfectly clear. We enforce the law to the best of our ability on behalf of the residents that we have been elected to represent.
So I don't know this developer from Adam. I just want to say I am one of your constituents and I disagree. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
I did get word that Commissioner Bass is trying to log out and log back in. I think we should give him a moment.
We know how he's going to vote. Can we vote?
You cannot vote by proxy in that way.
I can text him. He can text me his vote.
Should we just skip to the next one in the meantime? It's only a grant review, right? For $69.
I yield to you, Zach. We do have a vice chair, but
Vice Chair Love Wade.
yeah, maybe we can discuss while Commissioner Bass tries to log in.
Well, I would like to give him a moment to be able to cast a vote on this very important issue.
I don't think anyone was disputing not letting him vote. I think we were just discussing moving on to the next issue while he gets on, so then he can vote. So we're not voting.
Well, that would be fine. If Commissioner Ray, are you prepared to move on to the next BZA case until Commissioner Bass is able to rejoin us?
Actually, there isn't another BZA. The next, I believe, is a grant application.
Yeah, it's Commissioner Love Wade. It is the grant for the Parkview neighborhood cleanup. And what I was proposing is that as vice chair, you can step in and we can, hear the agenda item and discuss it.
Okay, I think I'm
while we wait on Commissioner
There we
Bass
go.
to come in.
We got him.
Okay.
Sorry. I really apologize for that. The only thing I can think of is maybe being in the back overheated everything. So where were we?
Ready to take a vote.
Okay. So what I was saying is I can see now, so no sun glare. So All those in favor of opposing the special exception relief and filing an appeal, say aye or raise your hand. So aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay, so that would then be 11-0-1. Thank you, commissioners. Again, sorry for the technical difficulties. Moving on to the next case.
Commissioner Bates, just for your records, I know Commissioner Miller wasn't able to vote.
Okay,
So
well then it's
10
going to be 10-0-1. Thank you for that. Okay, next moving on to the grant for the Parkview neighborhood cleanup. Commissioner Brown and Love Wade, since it's a grant, I'll let you introduce this and fill us all in.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Bass. I want to share some background on this particular grant regarding a neighborhood cleanup that happened in Parkview on May the 15th. And we held this cleanup at the 3000 block, 3000 Georgia Avenue. So this is right in front of the 7-7 Market where the Parkview sign is located, which is actually DCRA property. And so folks in the community painted the signage and also bought materials to support the cleanup. We reached out to the Clean City Initiative, and unfortunately they weren't able to support this event. I don't think they caught the request in time. But folks in the community did chip in to purchase some materials, mainly paint, which was expensive. One organizer in particular purchased the majority of the materials and products that we used to do this, and it came out to a total of $69. I know that this request is being made prospectively on a event that already happened. So not quite sure if the commissioners will be able to vote on, to approve this, but I know I want to hear from the grants committee on what the determination is. And just also wanted to see if Julie Crump is in the audience, because this is a grant that she submitted, and I invited her just to share more background if she's present. It's one of the attendees. I don't think I see her, but yeah, if she is there, Don, please promote her.
So in response to the grant application, there was a considerable discussion on it. And it was determined that we cannot approve a grant retroactive to the activity. Had they put in a grant with Crest earlier, that is something that we could approve. So I would encourage the commissioners to let their city groups know and neighborhood groups know that we do have funding available, but it has to be requested in advance of the event. So even though the cost is very nominal, $69, it cannot be approved because it would be a retroactive payment.
Mm-hmm.
So my recommendation is to deny the grant request.
Did we have any, oh, go ahead.
Commissioner Love Wade, was there discussion about if it was being paid to an individual or to a organization as well?
That also was part of the consideration. However, it was a moot issue simply because we cannot do the retroactive payment. We would then, as a commission, have to eat that amount. It would come out of our allotment to be used for other legitimate activities. So again, we just encourage the community to put those applications in advance. I mean, 30 days, even though a week before, the event, if they contact our our committee or their commissioner. We could have done something. Also, in the past, we were able to accommodate such requests through our petty cash. We could do that type of reimbursement. However, we do not use petty cash anymore, so we have no other option to reimburse the citizens for that. And I think it would set a very bad precedent to start accepting that, because, I mean, I could decide to go out and paint my block and then come back to the ANC and expect it to pay for something that we neither authorized nor sanctioned.
And I think she'll be okay. The applicant will be okay with that. I think going into this, she knew that that was a possibility. So, and I'm
also,
fine with
to Commissioner Bartek's comments, yes, we do need to have at least a sponsor who's a 501c3.
And I can vouch for that. I mean, the other grant request that has come to us, we've had to confirm that as well, that grants cannot be made to people. They have to be made to nonprofit organizations, but they cannot be made to individuals. So.
Right. So I would like to submit the motion that we deny the grant request based on the fact that it is a retroactive request for payment.
And I can second that.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the resolution of support in response to DDOT's notice of intent to increase no standing or parking anytime restrictions on the 400 block of Columbia Road. Commissioner Brown, this is in your single member district. I don't know if you want to introduce it or Transportation Committee, either way.
Me?
Sure, that's fine.
Sure, I could give some background, and I believe I gave the commissioners the notice of intent for this particular resolution, but the Department of Transportation was basically contacted by one of the residents, but I believe this is a kind of an issue, an ongoing issue, that multiple 311 requests have been submitted in regards to a particular space that sits right at the top of the 400 block of Columbia Road, and it borders or intersects with Water Street. So DDOT is proposing to increase the existing no standing or parking restricted area that is right sitting at that corner of the 400 block of Columbia Road, and just proposes to move it 20 feet back to improve the navigation of this narrow roadway. And, you know, for those that might be familiar with this street, it kind of looks like a side street that connects with Water Street, and it's very, very narrow, and residents have been complaining about delivery trucks parking at the top of the street, which then creates this congestion because cars aren't able to move around it. And in addition to that, cars get clipped. And I believe that as it currently stands, that particular area really isn't in compliance with DDOT's requirements. So they're proposing to move it back. They're also proposing to do the same on the 500 block of Columbia Road. So, you know, it just really, I think, would improve safety, since both areas are right at that crosswalk. And it would also improve what happens as drivers travel up to Water Street along the 400 block of Columbia Road. So just wanted to share that background. We have until July the 15th to respond to the notice of intent. But that is our ANC meeting. So this is the only meeting that we have to really vote on this. So I'm happy to also share my screen for the public if you need to see it, but I know commissioners have seen it. So I just wanted to see if commissioners have any questions or if there's any questions in the community.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. I know that the DDOT issues are of extreme interest to members of the community. So if there are any questions from commissioners, please raise your hand. Additionally, if there's any questions from members of the community, please also let us know that you have a question. Commissioner Hall.
Do they plan on doing more enforcement here or having physical barriers to stop people from standing? Because you see it all around here. You can have a sign and people just ignore it.
Yeah, that's a good question. And the reason why in this resolution, I'm proposing some form of curbside measure to accompany this particular change. So that would include lane strips with flex rods. There's also other curbside measures that I think can go there, but I think that is an appropriate recommendation.
So that's baked into this that we're voting for. Then we want that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Supporting the change, but also recommending some form of curbside measure to avoid the illegal parking, because enforcement really doesn't happen much at that block.
Right.
And we also worked in coordination with ANC 1B, who's also supportive of the change because this kind of borders our ANCs, and they're proposing also some curbside measure there, or maybe even a bike share.
And can you remind me how many parking spaces are going to take away?
It's just one. And it's not supposed to be a parking space. It was actually something DDOT needed to correct. But if you want to look at it as a parking space, it's one.
Okay.
And so it's 25 feet. The measurements are actually off. I think it's supposed to be like 15 feet. Should it be a parking space? But it's actually like the change would be 25 feet back.
All right.
And that would apply to the 500 block of Columbia Road as well. So
correct.
A total of 2 parking spaces. I'm just trying to keep track of the number of spaces that our commission is losing in total. And I support this because I know that is a very a strong safety issue.
So,
but I also want to the 2 parking spaces.
Right.
Yeah. But and I'll also say too, from the Transportation Committee meeting, it's clear that even though the removal and the bollards and all of that, which I think is great. In light of this, I think that we all recognize that DDOT should be doing more. There's a slip lane there. It's the Michigan Avenue overpass that funnels into there. There's a much bigger problem there. I think we're appreciative of DDOT trying to respond to neighbors who've put in the 311 requests and make it safer. But it's still, I personally don't consider it safe. It's safer.
Mm-hmm. Right. With a car sitting there, you really can't see the folks that cross the crosswalk. I've used it myself and it's pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I'd like to make a motion if there's no further discussion.
Yeah, I do not see any other hands raised among commissioners or among members of the community. So please move the item. I move to pass this resolution in support of DDOT's notice of intent to increase no standing or parking anytime restrictions at the intersection of the 400 block of Columbia Road and 3000 Water Street. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Next, Commissioner Ray, I believe you have a letter of support for DDOT's notice of installment of the Water Street protected bike lanes.
Thank you. I'll introduce this. We discussed this at the last transportation committee meeting, and then they put out the NOI literally, I think, the next day or two. So it is at the 65% level. So this is not the final. There will still be a final construction review that would still have to happen. But we have been talking about the Water Street and the Park Place bike lanes for many, I'll say years at this point. And so we know what a lot of the feedback tends to be. So this letter, which again I keep putting a link in the chat so people can see them if they're at home and they want to read them. But we are generally supportive that these lanes should be installed. That we appreciate the inclusion of the 10 new tree planting areas that will be placed along the west side of Water Street between Kenyon and Park Place. I'm sorry, in Princeton Place. Those street tree plantings have been sort of strategically placed to be either near the ends of the blocks or in some of the cross areas so as to minimize some of the parking displacement. And if you read the NOI, it kind of talks about it in terms of feet. So I can't give you any clear number, but it talks about the number of feet that's used for the street trees. Community members did, as we were kind of mentioning before, they did look at the plans and have identified the areas around Hobart and Columbia Road as still being problematic. They are more advisory lanes in that section, which means that they're not fully protected. And we do have those slip lanes. And so this letter points that out and asks that DDOT continue to look up and think of ways to deal with that. It may not come as part of this project, but in future work that we know might be happening with removing that spaghetti string of highways down there, that could be dealt with. And then it reminds them, as we are going to talk about later on, that this is just one piece of larger projects. It's still, we still need to see Park Road, we still need to see Park Place, and so that we can holistically see how this project fits in, but that we support moving forward with this, with the notion that those other projects are also going to move forward, and they will have other improvements where parking is in fact even added. So with that, I'll leave it for others to ask questions.
I see a question from Commissioner Love-Wade.
Of course, my question pertains to parking. So how many spaces of parking was lost or potentially could be lost?
So I would answer that with generally that the 10 street trees are going to affect 10 areas that could have a potential parking impact. And then, anytime that you are putting a bike lane next to like an alleyway, you need to leave a little room for people to make that turnout. So again, there are, you lose a few feet at some of those alleys. So, you're talking something in the area of 10 to 15 spaces, if I had to give you a good number. However, I would remind everyone that we're hoping to double the amount of parking that would likely be on Park Road and double the amount of parking that would be on Park Place as part of the overall project. So it can't be viewed necessarily in one area.
Okay, so but I'm trying to look at the whole picture so that the impact of losing those spaces as it correlates to the impact of losing additional spaces in a new proposal for Kenyon Street. So those people who are losing spaces on Water won't have opportunity to park on Kenyon, and those people who are losing spaces on Kenyon absolutely won't have opportunity to park on Water. I just want to again remind you of the squeeze that this community is experiencing through DDOT traffic solutions. And the impact is always on those residents who require an automobile, such as seniors, people with disabilities, homeowners with families. We're trying to make this a class 1 city that's accessible to all, but it's becoming apparent that the seniors are not going to be welcome in this city because they're not making accommodations for them. Families with children are going to be squeezed out because they don't have vehicles to carry their children, and I can't see all of them riding bikes. So all of these, I'm just bringing this up because all of these decisions singularly presented to us, which is what DDOT has been doing, holistically impacts the entire 1A, and we're being totally squeezed from Water to 14th Street. Parking spaces by the hundreds are being removed. And this is having a terrible impact on the quality of life of our community. I do support the Water Street project. We've been working on it for years. Nominal spaces are being lost because of the tree canopy, which that street desperately needs. But keep in mind, every decision that removes a parking space impacts a family.
Thank you, Commissioner. I agree with everything you said. One thing I would like to point out for some of the commissioners, since this project has been going on for a very long time, and they may not have the institutional firsthand experience. One thing I would like to point out, and I think something that has been lost by some people who have only now starting to engage and asking for things that aren't in the realm of possibility. DDOT came to us with a protected bike lane project. That's what they wanted. Park Place and Water both have unprotected bike lanes right now. And all DDOT originally wanted to do was move the cars over to protect the bikes. What this commission has done, and where I think we've been successful, and why we can get to a point where at least on water, we could support the 65 plans that are before us today, simply because we know there's more work to do. We know there's willingness to adjust some of those tree boxes for the best possible outcome. It's not set in stone where those tree boxes are going yet, but those tree boxes, that is a goal that came from the community before DDOT even proposed protected bike lanes. Because this commission is so concerned with the impact with loss of parking, the proposal to make Park Road a one-way road so that we can double the on-street parking there. That was a recommendation, an idea that came out of this commission to minimize impacts on parking. And one in which this commission sent out letters to every household on Park Road to ask for the direct input to see if this was an acceptable alternative. So that's a long-winded way of saying what DDOT wanted to do to us to get them to yes. We have had, I think, a good amount of success in getting them to improve the quality of life and find a more reasonable approach than they would have done if this commission hadn't fought for the community. It doesn't mean it's perfect. It doesn't mean that some blocks don't have more work to do. And it certainly doesn't mean that the other NOIs that come down the pike should be rubber stamped because there's support for Water Street. I will say that the Park Road, Park Place will be a separate NOI, and we may have to have this conversation again then. The plans for Kenyon Street are very preliminary, and it will also have a separate NOI. And I personally think there's a lot more work to do there. So to Commissioner Lovewade's point, this is a holistic approach. We've brought a lot to the table, and I think that we should, feel good that this is as good as it is because we've been so diligent. So are there any other questions or comments from commissioners? And while I'm looking for your hands, I do see we have one comment from a resident. So if there's none from commissioners, we can take the comment from the community.
Yes, hello,
Good
can you
evening.
hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, this is Lydia Curtis, and I just wanted to thank Commissioner Love Wade for speaking up on behalf of residential parking for the constituents. I just have a question about the street trees. Is the plan to put, I guess someone said 10 to 15 trees. Is it does the plan to make it look sort of like Sherman Avenue where the trees are like in the middle? Or what is the vision for that?
Sure, I can take that one. The plan is for only 10 trees. They would not be in the middle of the street. The street is too narrow for that. They also cannot be in the sidewalks because the sidewalks are too narrow for that. So they are to be bump outs from the sidewalk into, in some cases, it might encroach on an existing parking space. In other instances, it may encroach into the road between two crosswalks where it's technically not a legal parking space, or it may be close enough to the end of a block where it's space that wouldn't be open to a parking space again. So we would have to go back to the plans based on where the 10 trees ultimately have their final places to see what the overall impact on parking will be. Well, could it be as many as 10 spaces? It could. Will it? It will likely be a few less than that. But until we negotiate where those trees would go, we don't know the exact number. But no, it will not be in the middle of the street.
Okay, thank you.
And I was going to, oh, go ahead, Lydia.
No, I just wanted to be supportive of Commissioner Wade, and I appreciate her passion and advocacy around this area.
Thank you.
I agree. You have a fighter. So I see we also have a hand raised from Titania, if we could bring her up. And I may have mispronounced your name, and I apologize for that.
No, that's okay. I have one comment and then one question. So I participate in the transportation committee meetings, and during those meetings, it's really helpful because plans are pulled up. So the participants are able to see that 65% plan and conceptual plan that you guys are talking about. I think it will be equally helpful when we're going through letters of support of particular plans during these ANC meetings for the community to be able to see what exactly the ANC commissioners are supporting, because it's kind of hard to conceptualize what is being described with the tree planting bump outs if you're not necessarily used to those streetscape measures. So that's just one comment. And then a question I had, the letters of support from the commission, from the ANC commissioners for 65% plan, what exactly does that mean, I guess? That the ANC supports the plan as it stands?
I will take that one unless Commissioners Ray or Brown would like to step up. Because it's a notice of intent, that means that DDOT wants a response from the ANC that incorporates any feedback we have. We recognize, and I believe DDOT also recognizes, that there's still adjustments that can be made, and there's still opportunities to take what is before us and improve it, or have some kind of negotiation, for instance, with the exact tree locations, or even with what kind of trees should be planted there. Because the plans are not at 65%, or because the plans are not at 100%, I think we all recognize that things are going to change. What we would be supporting is that at the 65%, we recognize that there's going to be a protected bike lane. There's going to be 10 trees. We have given them a lot of comments. They have incorporated some of that feedback. They've listened to the community, and we want them to move forward with additional outreach to the community and additional plan sets shared with us. What we are not doing is saying that this is going to be so detrimental, we want you to stop. I will be honest, I don't think that would prevent DDOT from moving forward based on their history, but we're not asking them to stop. We're saying that we recognize that there's been some good progress, and we want you to finish building out those plans. And I will say, based on the relationship we have with the lead in the bike lane project, I think we reasonably can expect that he will be coming back to the community with updated plans from 65 before any implementation goes in.
Got it. Understood. Thank you, Commissioner. And to your comment, you'd be surprised the power the ANC commissioners have with DDOT. I'd be surprised if the ANC opposes a DDOT plan and DDOT still moves forward with that plan. But ultimately, thank you for your response.
It happens.
I would only add that because it is an NOI, it is open to the entire community. So anyone viewing this or who was a participant in the committee, as I know you were, is welcome to submit other sort of smaller details. I mean, we heard some of those small details, but none of them necessarily raised to the level that the Hobart and Columbia Road issue certainly was there. So that's why we're highlighting that. But if you have other suggestions that you'd like to see them try to address, this would be an opportunity to do that. So thank you.
Yeah, I just agree with Commissioner Ray. It is, these are public notices. It's not just for the ANC, it's sent to the ANC to weigh in because we do have that great weight. They allow us to give us that weight. But we encourage community members to submit their comments, and they are posted on the Transportation Committee's website. So we do a pretty good job of posting it. So feel free to look at any of the NOIs that we post on the ANC's website.
Yeah, I agree with both of you commissioners. And then just to clarify, well, I think that on other DDOT projects, we've seen our positions sometimes. It feels like it's an exercise in futility. Regardless of how we feel, DDOT may or may not listen to us. I've never seen us not advocate for what we think is the best outcome for the community. We don't pull punches with DDOT just because we think they're going to disagree with us, even when they do. I see we also have a hand up from Daniel Hayes, if we can bring him up.
Good evening. You probably know me from Bike to Work Day, and I thank you for your support on that in the past. But actually, I just wanted to thank all the commissioners for their good inquiry and support over the many years of looking at multimodal transportation through our neighborhood. Every improvement that happens for everybody is good for our community, and I want to thank you all very much for your hard work. Have a good evening.
I think I see that we have Garrett Hennigan who's raised his hand. If we can bring Garrett up.
Good evening, commissioners. Hoping you can hear me. My name is Garrett Hennigan. I work with the Washington Area Bicyclist Association, and we've been enthusiastically encouraging the build out of more protected bike lanes like the one proposed on Warder. I wanted to spend just a quick moment because I think a lot of the attention has been put to the trees, which I think are wonderful for adding shade and also making it a more pleasant place to walk. But I wanted to put some attention to what positive changes this project will also bring to the corridor, especially around traffic safety and who benefits from that. So right now there's an existing bike lane and there's parked cars on either side and a relatively wide driving lane, which really does encourage people to drive faster than is often safe. And another problem is that at intersections, there's often very poor visibility around the parked cars for people crossing the street. So adding protected bike lanes here, it's actually going to physically narrow the street, which will encourage people to drive slower. Slower driving is safer driving, which means that crashes are less likely. And if they do happen, because they're at slower speeds, they're less likely to result in a serious injury or death. For people biking or riding scooters, protected bike lanes are much less stressful. So you may see more people biking in the neighborhood who don't feel comfortable using the existing lanes. And further, because the road will be visually narrowed, especially at intersections, you get better visibility for people crossing on foot, or especially in wheelchairs or people with disabilities who might move slower, which leads to an all-around more walkable neighborhood, which I think is great. So just wanted to provide those sort of perspectives on some of the additional benefits that this brings. And thanks for your time.
Thank you, Garrett. Lydia, bring Ms. Curtis back up. I think I saw her hand go back up.
No, I don't have any more questions.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because I thought I saw your hand go down and then back up. So
Thank you for checking in.
Absolutely. I don't see any other community hands up. Are there any additional questions from commissioners or comments?
Chairperson,
Seeing
there's
none.
a community member that posted in the Q&A that J. Speak McKnight. I'm not sure if they want to unmute and share their comment.
I would say that's a Kenyon Street question, which might be better handled in our next piece. This is on water.
Yeah, and Commissioner Bonneau, thank you for bringing that up. Let's see. Yeah, okay, we'll bring that up in the Kenyon discussion. All right,
I think you were about to say, is there a motion? You went.
I'm sorry, is there a motion on the table?
Yeah, I would move that we approve the letter of support as written. Ask for a second.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Aye.
Okay. So that makes it 10-0-1. Moving on to letter of support for the council to continue the fare-free circulator rides. Commissioner Rybarczyk, do you want to introduce that? Or Commissioner Ray, I don't care which.
Commissioner Ray, you want me to take a crack and then you
Yeah, you
jump
put
in?
a lot of work. I read it. You put a lot of work in there, so it's all you.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Just so you know, this was much of this was copped from a previous resolution back in 2019 where the ANC supported then the continuation of the fare-free circulator rides through council paying for the district paying for the ridership. And what we're asking for in this letter is the same request, except that in her FY22 budget proposal, the mayor has actually proposed a special revenue, a special purpose revenue fund to cover this, and that would repeal the requirement in DC subtitles to collect fares on the circulator. That will cost 1.6 million annually from FY22 through 25. And I'm not sure if you all had also seen the email recently that there is a transit development plan that affects how the district is plotting out the future of the circulator, and that comment period was extended. So I made sure to also incorporate a few comments relevant to the line that goes through our ANC, in support. They made sense. They were improvements to the terminal stop at the Adams Morgan Woodley Park Metro. Hopefully make that more ADA accessible. We mentioned that in writing. Also changing the name of the line, you might have seen before, it's called the WPAM, which is Woodley Park Adams Morgan. It ignores that the line goes downtown to the McPherson Square. So they had proposed updating the name to include that. And also we do call out in 2019, we did encourage council and the mayor to support the creation of a dedicated circulator line that services Ward 7 because they did not have one. And the great news was that was created through a fairly extensive process, to my understanding, that will connect Woodley Park or the Union Station all the way through Deanwood. So just applauding that in the letter as well. So I would love if we would send this both to council and submit it to the transit development plan team through the district, both because it overlaps with council and the planning that they're doing.
Thank you, Commissioner Barczyk. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners about this letter? Or excuse me, yeah, letter. Seeing none, are there any, I'll check, see if there's any questions from community members. Seeing none, is there a motion?
I'd move to support this letter of support urging continued funding and expansion of DC Circulator.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner. Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Moving on to the resolution urging DDOT to provide ANC 1A with a comprehensive proposal for crosstown modal transportation study, implementation, etc. Commissioners, I know that myself, Commissioner Brown, Commissioner Ray, and Commissioner Barczyk all were working on this pretty diligently, with me being, I would say, one of the junior partners. So would one of the senior partners like to introduce this and talk us through it?
Commissioner Barczyk.
Sure. I'll start, and I will pass it over to Commissioner Brown afterwards. So over the course of, I would say, since February, we received our first update from Aaron Goldbeck, who is leading the crosstown multimodal transportation study implementation that is focused on east-west mobility. I received one of the first updates back in February. And then last month, I received a large update as well regarding Kenyon. And, obviously we have received and had also been forwarded plenty of emails from community members, learned of a flyer that had gone around in the neighborhood. And, I know these are in the SMDs of Commissioner Brown and Ray and Bass. But tonight, what we're really asking for is what's been presented to us so far is a small part of the picture. And I know Commissioner Brown can speak to this a little bit better than myself, but we've been presented with part of the picture. And I know something that we have asked DDOT and Aaron specifically is to come to us with the broader picture of how this is all connected. Because we've seen time and time again, I know this ANC has requested a more holistic networked look at transportation projects through our neighborhood, so we can fully look at the impacts of those projects. And we're asking for DDOT to do the same thing here. And I do want to give a shout out to Aaron, who has been accessible, and even over the course of just a few months, we've seen how he's been able to change plans and incorporate feedback from some of those meetings. So I know and Commissioner Brown can speak to this as well, but also urging that DDOT does continue this outreach. And now that many of the pandemic restrictions are lifted, being out on the ground is going to be important again. And Commissioner Brown can talk about, but if there's opportunities to demonstrate, to model how things are actually looking, and getting DDOT out there to see how the street's being used firsthand, some of the signage issues that we've run into, some of the street marking issues that we run into, that might not be such an issue if they were out on the street. So calling for that continued outreach as well. But I'd pass it over to Commissioner Brown about that.
Yes, and I've been pleased to work with Commissioner Robarchak on, this resolution, but also on the work that we've been doing through his leadership on the Transportation Committee. We have been working with DDOT on a number of proposals that are connected to the Move DC Crosstown initiative. And as residents may be aware, this initiative started in 2014, even prior to me becoming an ANC commissioner. But I was engaged in a lot of the meetings, the community meetings that was held between wards 1 and ward 5. And we were able to look at storyboards and look at various design concepts of how all of these pieces come together. But there's been major delays in the project, and this ANC voted on many resolutions to get that, to kickstart the process and really support these multimodal projects through the budget process, because there have been several fatalities, both in cars and as a result of pedestrian and cycle accidents. And so we really wanted to add some pressure to DDOT. So we appreciate their partnership in working with the ANC and with the community on these particular projects. I think that, as Commissioner Robarchak had mentioned, it's really hard for the ANC and the community to envision the whole picture of this networked infrastructure that this multimodal transportation plan calls for, and that was studied. And we're voting on things incrementally, and it's really hard to articulate to the community the whole pie. So what this resolution does is it just asks DDOT for just the entire plan, the entire vision. We know that the design concepts aren't fully fleshed out, and there's a process for that, but I think it's helpful for us as we review things and to make decisions on this ANC. And it involves the protected bike lanes, it involves protected bus lanes, all ridership, transit, priority treatment, just all along our ANC. So that's what this resolution is what we have before us today. And so Commissioner Robarchak is right. I think that community engagement is definitely needed, particularly as we're not ready to vote on the Kenyon Street protected bike lane design. And there's other pieces that are this ANC is working on to ensure that there's a balanced approach for that. So continuous community engagement and outreach is definitely needed. So we're going to need DDOT's partnership on that. And we're going to need their involvement in making sure that the residents are aware of what's coming in the pipeline and how everything will come together. So I just wanted to, make those remarks and see if commissioners or folks in the community have any questions.
I see a hand raised from Commissioner Love Wade, so we'll start with her.
Yes, one of my major concerns with the study is that it began in 2014. Most of the residents were not in this neighborhood at that time. Well, many were not in the neighborhood at the time. The data that they're using from the latest study is 2016. That's been 5 years, almost 6 years ago now. So the population shift, the demographics, the transportation increases, all of that has changed dramatically since 2016. And my problem is that, to my knowledge, and I've asked for it, there's been no update to the traffic flow study. There's been no update to include the change in demographics. There's been no update to account for the population increases. So the decisions they're making is on something that happened 6 years ago. So I would ask you, how good is your computer equipment from 6 years ago if you had to use the same equipment from 6 years ago to achieve your work today? We need a more
allow me
study.
allow me to just answer that, because I know this came up before. I mean, I would say that this was a forward-looking plan, and Commissioner Brown was involved, since the beginning, but it's a forward-looking plan that was supposed to.
I just want to make it clear that I was involved as well from day one as prior chairman of the Transportation Committee. So I'm not new to the dance. I just want to make that clear.
Thank you. And thank you for that. But this was a forward-looking plan that was supposed to start last year, I think, in implementation. And so they were planning forward. And unfortunately, with population growing, I see the need growing even more rather than reducing the need for some of these changes. So I mean, folks are able to disagree with that, but I think that that's what they were planning on happening.
Thank you, commissioners. If I may make a comment, as I'm looking at the screen, it looks like I'm sitting in the dark. Anyway, if I may make a comment, the one thing that's really important to me is I recognize the importance of improving our crosstown transportation. So I'm comfortable with the resolution that's been introduced, mostly because it calls out, and something I've been asking for a very long time, and I know I'm kind of repeating some of what Commissioner Brown and Rybarczyk have already said, but to me, it's really, really difficult to support a proposal for Kenyon, for example, when it's 1 block long. I personally need to know what a transportation network looks like. And I need to know, because the multimodal plan talks about buses, it talks about bikes, it talks about pedestrians. I need to know what the impacts or any proposals are going to be for not just Kenyon, but for Irving, for Columbia, for Harvard, because those are the only 4 roads that go east-west from Ward 5 to Adams Morgan. And I expect a network to function. I want to find something like we've done with Warder and Park Place thus far that's balanced, that doesn't create unnecessary or overdue hardship, and that makes sense. And it's really hard to evaluate if it's going to be piecemeal, 1 block at a time, because ultimately, 2 comments that were made earlier, if the impact to one particular block is too great, or if the community on one particular block very loudly opposes something, if it causes DDOT to stop, then what happens to the part that they've already built? What happens to the impacts of that section when it doesn't go anywhere? And so again, and with the multimodal study, they've talked about big picture things like removing the Michigan Avenue overpass. So I would like to know what they're working towards, because then there's opportunities to look at, okay, maybe there's an impact on this block, but there's a net gain on another block. That's what we've been doing with north-south, but we really don't have that opportunity right now because we're being given a very narrow vision. And I think that there are wins, but we're not going to find them as a commission if we don't have a broader vision. Any other comments from commissioners or questions? If not, I will go to community members.
I did want to point out mostly to the community, because I think that maybe the ANC members know this, but what we saw in the committee meeting was only a concept. It's not a 35, it's not a 65. I mean, so this is the beginning of the beginning of where this is going. So there will be plenty of opportunities to continue the engagement. I think as part of our follow-up to this letter, we will be asking that DDOT do some on-site engagement so that people like Mr. McKnight can specifically speak to somebody at DDOT about what their concerns are and how the alley works, and they can see how the alley works, and so that those questions can be answered by people certainly more knowledgeable than me. And then only to mention that, at least I will say that as part of the budget process, I want to make sure that people are aware. You know, Eleanor Holmes Norton was here in February. She spoke to transportation issues. She sits on the Federal Transportation Committee. She has earmarked $3 million for the district for its bike lane project 20 by 22. Is $4 million for bus lane priorities. So the district is going to be receiving monies for these projects. So, you know, now is the time to start talking about them. And that's what, you know, the point of getting this resolution out is to get all of the information we can so that we can do everything that everyone just said, which I completely agree with. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ray. I'm going to, let's bring up Lindsay first.
Hey, good evening.
Welcome.
Hi. So I'm just here with a couple of additional people in the 400 block at Kenyon, just wanting to talk about this specifically this bike lane. And on the 400 block here, it's been rather an abject failure with this block. I know my fellow colleague there from the Washington Area Bike Association talked about these benefits from the bike lane. People continue to speed constantly along Kenyon with this bike lane. There's no reduction in the speed. No one is using this bike lane at all. We continue to convert our single family homes into multi-family homes, and but we continue to lose parking because of the bike lane. So it's not providing the benefit at all, specifically to the 400 block of Kenyon that we seem to be told that it's going to, but just also appreciate the comments from the commissioners as well earlier about this. So thanks.
Thank you very much. Can we bring up Tatiana again, please?
Hi, everybody. Thank you. So I appreciate the current resolution as it stands right now. The resolution for a comprehensive understanding of what this crosstown multimodal transportation study looks like. I think the original agenda had a different resolution, so I'm glad that this resolution is for the commissioners to better understand the overall proposal. I participated in the Transportation Committee meeting, and I appreciate that the DDOT PM is responsive. However, during that meeting, he did not have actual answers to any of the ANC commissioners' questions. He did not understand what happens with additional ADA parking needed. He did not understand how disabled residents actually would access their homes. He did not have a number of parking to be lost. There was a lot of questions unanswered. And my main concern was that because the ANC has been waiting so long and has been pushing for this to move forward, that it would move forward in a way where the design would not actually be beneficial for the residential street. So I'm happy that the resolution right now is for everybody to have a better understanding of what is actually going to be proposed so that it actually works for the community. I'm not anti-bike, and I really have trouble with pro-bike people thinking that the people who don't want these bike lanes are because it's loss of parking. There's so many things that will be impacted for the Kenyon residents if the design moves forward as currently presented as a conceptual plan. So I appreciate the resolution. I have no oppositions. And I also found it really interesting that Commissioner, I believe it was Bose, mentioned that flyers was submitted to the Parkview residents to have them notified over what was going to be provided by DDOT for the bike lanes and the changing the roadway to a one-way street. However, I've been talking to my neighbors thanks to a notification that has been passed around to the residents. And residents have been living here for decades who had no idea this was coming. So I appreciate that now they're informed and now we can actually participate with the ANC and DDOT about the plan and what's going to be proposed moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see Daniel Hayes has his hand up, if we can bring him up again.
Hi again. I agree that looking at a network is a very important thing to do, and I say amen to all of you in proposing that DDOT talk about the entire network. But the one piece I would like to argue with the person who spoke earlier saying that no one uses the Kenyon Street separated bike lanes between Park and Warder, that's my route to and from the university that I go every time I go out. I bike out there 10 miles morning and evening. And having completed that whole stretch gives me a very safe way of going to and from the university, and as well as anyone else going to Catholic U or anywhere else that direction. And every time I use it, I see people going both ways on that whole section of protected bike lane. So I would just disagree that it's not used at all. But thank you very much for your looking into all this on a network-wide basis.
Thank you very much. See we have Jay McKnight has raised their hand. Let's go to them and then Tim Hampton. You
okay,
need to,
I'm sorry.
there we
Can
go.
you hear me now? I'm still
Yes, we
learning
can.
how
Thank
to
you.
work this technology. Thank you. First of all, I have to say a lot of things, but I won't do that. But I have. It's been very. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Without making a long story, let me make it short. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. I appreciate the feedback that you've given. I would like to just say a couple of things in my experience with the situation. I've been here for over 20 years. And quite honestly, I had no idea that this was even in the works. I only recently, in talking with my neighbors, found out about the extension. I live in the 600 block of Kenyon Street. And I know that I talked with someone who lived in the 500 block and they were fully aware of it. So I don't know what happened to the rest of us in 600 block, but we weren't informed about this. So thank you that that's happening now. The second thing that I wanted to bring up is I am not against the bike lanes in the general sense. I think the protection is a good idea. But I also think, and I'm speaking forward thinking myself, which I'm sure is going to be the same for a lot of people. It's not just about the bike lanes. The adjustments made for the bike lanes impact the people who live here. And one of the things that I can immediately see, and I mentioned, is I live in the 600 block in Kenyon Street. We have one small alleyway that we have to use to access our homes. We have an apartment building at the end of the alleyway. And all of us are trying to use the small alleyway, which you cannot even turn around in this alleyway. You go one way or the other. In addition to that, there's only one way we can get into our alleyway, and that's basically through two very short and very sharp, narrow alleyways off of Kenyon Street, or coming in from Lamont all the way around Kiefer through a small little inlet to get to where we are. Having said that, going out, we have to go out onto Kiefer, and we immediately have to go onto Georgia Avenue. There's about a 3-car length space between the alleyway entrance onto Kiefer at that end and the Georgia Avenue intersection. There's a stop sign there. With this increased amount of traffic that we are going to have to do to get out of that space, there at least needs to be considerations of a stoplight be put there. We have to get across onto Georgia Avenue. That's something that when you're talking about a bike lane, you're making an improvement, but you also have to take into consideration what the fallout of that, or how that impacts us. So then that means, are you all looking at that? And are you going to say we need to put into this bike budget the things that we need to do to change and make the community safer for the people who have to make the adjustment, such as we would have to make? We all can't get out of Kiefer Street on a stop sign. It's not safe, and no one would want to have to do that. We all have jobs. There's too many people in a tight space. So I'm not going to keep talking because I tend to go on and on, but I just want to make that point. And I'm sorry, I apologize because I cannot pronounce Zach's last name, but I just wanted to kind of like let you know that to kind of please take something like that and work it into the vision that you're espousing, because that has a real impact. Us having a seniors to park in the backyard, we have to shovel snow to get out of our yard, and then we'll have to shovel snow in the alleyways just to get to Kiefer Street. And that's just my little example, but I'm sure all along the way that this is being planned, it's going to impact people like that. It's a hidden cost. So please, when you're making decisions and considering, please think about something like that as well, because I think that is just, our safety is just as important. And not to say it's more important, but just as important. And putting us in harm's way, I think kind of defeats the purpose, don't you?
Thank you. And I just wanted to say thank you for sharing that. And that's an exact type of feedback that we can take action on. Like that's what, when we take that back to DDOT to say, listen, I highly doubt Aaron and his concept plans from DDOT has considered the Kiefer exit onto Georgia Avenue. And that's the exact type of actionable thing that helps us help them make their plans better. So I just took that down, and I'm sure the other commissioners did as well. And that's the type of thing that I know Commissioner Bass has also, when we were talking about water before, worked on. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why we need to do the outreach and hear from the community members, is because everyone's experience is different and the impact is different for every person. So we need for us to have a holistic way of moving this in any direction, or to even think about, we need to know what the impact is for everybody. So I really appreciate that. That's all very valuable. Moving on, let's go to Tim Hampton, and then I see we have Lucille Brewer.
My name is Lena, and I went back to...
Mr. Hampton, you are on.
Raina is going to speak. My name was just on the Zoom.
Okay.
My name is Lena, and I went to see the street where the bike lane might be put. And I went in the alley, and I looked at all the houses, and they all had garages. So I don't think they need the parking in the front because they all have garages.
Okay, thank you. Did you have anything else you'd like to say? Anything else you'd like to share with all the commissioners?
I ride my bike. Like kind of. I would really like a picture.
Where do you ride your bike?
On the street.
Okay,
On Kenyon Street.
on Kenyon Street. Well, thank you so much. I will say it. I think we're starting to do some good outreach to hear from everybody. So we really appreciate it. Thank you. If there's any other comments from this line, please speak up. Otherwise, we will move to Lucille Brewer.
Okay, thank you very much. I really appreciate this opportunity to come before you. I especially appreciate the communication that I received from my neighbor, as well as that flyer that I received. It was beneficial for me to get a hold of the issue at hand. I have been a resident of DC my entire life. I've lived on Kenyon Street since 1980. And this change would dramatically impact the quality of my life as a senior citizen. It is already becoming difficult to navigate crowded streets and to have one lane of moving traffic, creating additional exhaust from the long wait, the loud noises of ambulances and fire trucks attempting to get through. All of that helps to deteriorate the quality of my life. In addition, we've got to look at the safety and the accessibility for all of our residents, not just the bikers, but also for those people who have to navigate the streets using their cars or to walk. This is an important issue and it's not to be taken lightly. Not to say that we have taken this issue lightly, but I think communication is key. Providing the information to everyone in a timely manner would have been much more beneficial, though I hear this plan and it works for a number of years. It has not come to my attention, and I've lived in the 600 block of Kenyon Street for all those 42 years and did not have been this information. There's a lot that needs to be done. And again, I appreciate the previous adult female caller who talked about the alleyway in the back. It's not safe. It's not wide. I see children in the alley riding their bikes. That's not going to happen if that becomes a major route of transportation for persons who live on Kenyon Street, the 600 block of Kenyon Street. It is already difficult. We have an influx of new people. Density of the community, of the neighborhood has increased dramatically with the bump up in the homes, people expanding their properties where once it was single family, now they're multi-family dwellings. So we got an influx of people competing for use of the available community space. So I am opposed to this proposal. I'm not opposed to bikes. I'm not opposed to healthy living. I'm not opposed to walking, but not here, not on the 600 block of Kenyon Street, the 500 block of Kenyon Street. We're already impacted, and I would like to see this bike track move to some other area. So I appreciate
Okay.
this opportunity. I appreciate my ANC Commissioner Brown, and I definitely appreciate Commissioner Love Wade for their insights, and for all the people who have spoke specifically to the issues that this proposal would bring about. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Brewer. We really do appreciate you taking the time tonight to share your personal insight. Moving on, let's go to Leah. Is it Carrere? And I apologize for getting that so very wrong.
Oh, no worries. Thank you so much. I'm Leah Carr, and I'm a over 20-year resident of Washington, D.C., and a homeowner in Columbia Heights with my family for almost 15 years. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this important issue. I understand the complexities and particularly the concerns with the residents on the street. It was very interesting to hear about the concerns. It sounds like some of them are issues that need to be addressed regardless of what happens with a bike lane, such as the key for exit, which seems like needs to have been addressed for a while now. I do want to speak on behalf of residents such as my family that depends on non-car transportation, including bikes, walking, and public transportation in order to get around the city. My family, we have 2 kids and we don't own a car, which helps reduce traffic for others as well as reduce pollution. And so we particularly depend on bikes for cross-town commuting. And so we are eager to see more bike lanes, but respectful of the needs of the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I do not see any other hands raised. Oh, I see Tim Hampton has raised his hand again.
Thank you. I know Raina already spoke from our family, but I just want to mention quickly that we bike regularly. We have experienced the violence of traffic, and we do hope that there's a way to move forward and build a protected bike lane. I really appreciate the history of this ANC in trying to balance different concerns, and I know there's a lot, but there's only so much public space and our concerns are almost infinite. But I appreciate how that balance has gone in other projects, and I imagine it will be in this case too. And I hope there's a balance that can be found that involves making a protected way for people to get around. I've been to far too many candlelight vigils this year and last year, and so many, and it's, this is what's needed to avoid some of that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I don't see any other hands raised. So are there any other questions or comments from commissioners, or is there a motion?
We might be ready for a motion, Mr. Chairman, but just recognizing that we lost some commissioners. So as you're collecting votes, just make note of that.
Okay. And I will rely on Commissioner Rabarczyk to also double check those numbers for commissioners. So is there a motion?
Commissioner Rabarczyk, I yield to you because I just wanted to thank you so much for all of your service, not only on the ANC, but also as chairman of the Transportation Committee. I know you said this will be your last meeting, but I just wanted to acknowledge you and thank you for all of your hard work as secretary of this ANC and just keeping it all together.
Thank you so much. And I really do appreciate it. And it's been an honor. And I thank Commissioner Love Wade as well for everything that she has taught me. And I know we do not see eye to eye on many things, but she's brought so much history and knowledge of the neighborhood and community. It's been totally worth it and irreplaceable. So thank you. so much. So I move to support this resolution to DDOT.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. 8. So is that, are we down to 10 commissioners, Commissioner Rybarczyk?
9.
We're down to
9.
9.
Okay. So then it passes 9-0 to 0. That leads us to the last agenda item, which is the grant application. Dom sent it to everybody in your ANC email. I believe it's 7:15. It's the applicant is the Ward 1 Mutual Aid Network. We have, I've reached out earlier last couple of days. The Ward 1 pod is not a recognized nonprofit, but they are part of the greater pod, which is a nonprofit, which would be their fiduciary agent. The grant application is for a mural painting on Morton Street Kids Camp. The event is scheduled for July 5th, which is why we needed to talk about it tonight. The event will take place at 750 Morton Street. And there are a number of things that I know that Commissioner Wade, you've already talked to the applicant about. For instance, the stipend is not something that we're able to fund. Art supplies we typically have funded in the past. But I know that you've gone through this at some length with the applicant, Commissioner Love-Wade. So I will let you let us know how that conversation went, and also ask the question of, and I wish Commissioner Miller were still with us at this stage of the meeting, because kids camps in the past have been something that we've gotten in trouble with. I don't know if there's any flexibility because of the pandemic, but maybe Commissioner Love-Wade, since you have been so involved and so supportive of grants, maybe there's some history you can share with us on that. And you're muted, Commissioner Love-Wade. Perfect.
Okay, thank you. I did talk with the applicant, and there are a number of items on there that we absolutely cannot fund. We have been in touch with the OANC, and they've not been responsive to date. I know they have a lot on their plate right now. I'm not comfortable with this grant application. And I haven't seen the budget that identifies specifically what they were requesting from us. It's a general budget, and I'm reluctant to cherry pick from someone else's grant what we will and will not give them. I think they should have modified the grant as I asked her to identify what she actually wanted from the ANC, and we don't have that. I'm just not ready to recommend approval of the grant.
Okay.
And there's also a consideration that there's funding available to other DC government agencies for this project. And I know that we can't fund something that a DC agency funds. And so I think that the mural painting comes under the arts program, and they are begging people to apply for grants. I've gotten notices almost every day where they have hundreds of thousands of dollars they're trying to give away, and the people aren't applying for those grants. So I really don't feel comfortable in recommending approval of this grant, but I will say that I would be willing to consider it at a special meeting if it was something that the rest of the commission would be willing to undertake.
Okay, I can get back to the applicant and provide that feedback. I would also like to say, since this is for a mural, one thing I would personally like to, and I can provide this feedback as well, is I would like to know where the mural is specifically going to be located. And I would like to know what the design is, because I know that when Murals DC selects an artist, they usually give us a design so that we can see if it's something that we can support in the neighborhood. And I just kind of be interested in like what are our, if we were paying for supplies, essentially we're paying for the mural. So what's our money supporting in the community? Like, is it something that's truly beneficial or at least attractive?
Right. So we don't have sufficient information to move forward with this application at this time. So my recommendation, my motion would be to deny the grant based on the information provided, but that we're open to further discussion and a special meeting if necessary.
All right, I will follow up with you then to make sure I've got all of the follow-up questions together and then reach back out to the applicant and give them better instruction of what they need to go forward, should they choose to do so. Okay, so Commissioner Love-Wade has made a motion. I will second it. All those in favor, unless there's further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. And that means we are at the end of the agenda. So I will move to close the meeting at 10:40 p.m. Is there a second?
Second.
There we go. All those in favor say aye.
Good night.
Aye.
Aye.
Have a good,
Good night.
have a good night,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.